Record button. I always forget that record button. Here we go. Yes. All right, I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Lost Pines Groundwater Conservation District, the board meeting for Wednesday, September 20th, here at 6 p.m. It's actually 6:05 p.m. at the Elgin Public Library Civic Center. Welcome to everyone. I'd like to welcome, I saw Representative Giddings out. Thank you for joining us. Are there any other county district officials out there that I missed? All right. Thank you. So thank you for joining us, Mr. Giddings. So with that, if we can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and the Texas Pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor of the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. So again, welcome everyone. And with that, we'll move on to agenda item number 2, public comments. We'll first start with non-agenda items. So Mr. Exner, why don't we start with you since you had general comments?
Do I go right there?
Yeah, up on this podium, please. And let's make sure that, can we make sure the microphone is on? Should be a button on it, perhaps.
I'll leave it up to you because I don't know about it. Oh.
There we go. Thank you.
My name is Rodney Exner. I live in Lexington. I'm here representing my dad, W.O. Exner. Y'all may know him. He's been around a long time. He turned 97 last month. Anyway, he's in assisted living. Otherwise, he would definitely be here. Like I said, him being in assisted living, we pick him up, take him out, put him with the cows and one thing and another. And this summer, as hot as it got, we were starting to run low on water. Didn't know what we were going to do, and we were trying to figure out. Anyway, I took him out there that one day, and Mr. Thomas happened to be across the fence. Our property is directly east of their property. And we started talking, and I mentioned to him about the lack of water. And anyway, make a long story short, he contacted my dad the next day and made sure that they had a way of figuring out. He told Dad, said, if I got water, you'll have water. So he went ahead and sent out some equipment, dug out some tanks that we had over there, and by the grace of God, we found some springs, and the next morning we had about 6 inches of water. And the point is that I don't really understand what's going on with the water, but we had a well over there that went dry, and he sent a crew out there to see if he could get it going. No luck, but we're still hopeful that we are able to get something going on it again. But the fact is, the man helped us get stock water out there, and we are greatly appreciative of that. And that's my main thing about wanting to put in a good word for him. Can't comment on all the wells going dry, but it's not a good thing. So, but I'm just saying that the man tries to help you if he can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, I've got Bill Rhodes, who says he's relinquishing time to Nancy McKee. So then I've got Nancy McKee. And Nancy McKee is going to speak on Finance Committee report.
I have my written comments that I wish to share. Good evening. For the record, my name is Nancy McKee. I'm a landowner in Wynn County. I have a registered exempt well in the Carrizo Aquifer, which was mitigated due to Vista Ridge losses under the now suspended mitigation program. I have several concerns after reading the Finance Committee's August report. Cost sharing, unknown costs, betterments, and well driller vetting in the new mitigation program. A cost sharing program rather than a full cost program. Prior to the legislative session, several of us met with Senator Colcourt's legislative aides, including President Hernandez and Director Smith. It was here that Senate Bill 1080 was birthed to allow Lost Pines to reinstate its well mitigation program. Subsequently, several well owners from the district provided oral testimony to the Senate Interim Committee on Water, Agricultural, and Rural Affairs, and revealed their experience of sudden well failures and personal costs to get these wells back in production, which virtually coincided with the first 6 months of Vista Ridge's production. In fact, Senator Colcourt at one of the hearings tapped on the table and said this, Vista Ridge, was exactly what she had predicted was going to happen, and here it is happening now. While Senate Bill 1080 was vetoed by Governor Abbott, we do have House Bill 3059 giving some help in well remediation, which is what Lost Pines GCD is using today to design the mitigation program. A cost-sharing program was never discussed with Senator Colcourt, nor was it ever broached to those landowners who testified in support of Senate Bill 1080 in good faith in the regular session. I do not believe a cost-sharing program was ever the intent of this legislation. Proposing that landowners now share the burden of losses they have nothing to do with seems a little like bait and switch for the landowners to support the legislative program. Those of us who have stressed over these past 2 years have endured enough. Approximately 14 people on my county road alone has gone through this. Well owners in Lee County would have to shoulder the cost, in our case, of supplying San Antonio with water. You have export projects pending in the district as well as projects pending in other GCDs and other counties. Instituting a cost sharing from the get-go in your new program would seriously damage the credibility of this district. Please do not add to our stress by making us scapegoats in the challenges you are facing. Unknown costs for mitigation. While there is concern about cost to mitigate, I remind this board that at the beginning of the mitigation program, there was a generous amount of funds set aside for such. And when the program was suspended, there were considerable funds remaining. These funds should be reinstated into the program to help address your cost concerns. Betterment. Betterments to one person might be a necessity to others. For example, I am close to needing to lower my pump. I have only 60 feet more before my pump's horsepower is maxed out. It probably makes sense to go even lower with the necessary equipment to avoid doing it again and relieving the need to stress over well levels every 2 months. Surely Lost Pines does not want this program to be a money pit. Upgrading my pump would be needed due to Vista Ridge. Honestly, I wish I had enough water. So there needs to be a very clear definition of betterment that could be a win-win for the owner and the district. Labor estimates from a local driller. A indicates Lost Pines checked with one contractor. I remind you there are several. And as every profession, there are good and bad. There should be an opportunity for several contractors to give labor estimates. Choosing the low bidder does not always work out too well. Not only that, as a landowner who has gone through so much with my well, I would prefer being able to use the contractor that has a history of quality performance and equipment. A better way would be to vet contractors and enable a landowner to have a choice. The first mitigation program, in fairness to Lost Pines, when the first mitigation program began, there was not a lot of thought put into the program. This, of course, was to expedite reimbursement to the landowners. Unfortunately, individuals just sent in the bill, Lost Pines paid, and that was the end. Before the program is reinstated, I strongly recommend a committee formed to set up rules for evaluation and confirmation as to the cause of the well failure, that being a major drawdown in their aquifer. I thank you for the opportunity to voice my concerns this evening, and I respectfully ask that you consider those concerns when establishing the mitigation program. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to have public comments on non-agenda items? All right. With that, I'd like to open it up to public comments for agenda items. However, note that right now in this phase of the agenda, any comments now would not be on the record. So if you want your comments on the record, I would suggest to wait until agenda item 4B. And when we speak and we open up the public hearing, then you can provide your comments, and those comments would be on the record in the hearing. So any agenda item public comments that are not to be on the agenda, or excuse me, not to be on the record. All right, so then we'll move on to the consent agenda. Agenda item 3. The consent agenda items are routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion or action on these items unless requested by a board director. The minutes of the August board meeting, the financial report through August 31st, any invoices received greater than $5,000.
I'd like to pull that, Elvis, just very briefly.
The C, the invoices, okay, and then D, water well monitoring update and educational opportunity. Anybody else would like to pull anything out? All right, so let us vote on everything else except for item C.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda with item C pulled out.
I hear a motion.
I second.
Second motion, the motion is to accept the consent agenda with item C removed. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? With that, the motion passes. All right, Mr. Phil Cook, your concern over invoices.
Not so much a concern, just a...
Let me turn this on for you.
Thank you. Go ahead. Not so much a concern.
Doesn't sound like it's on.
No, it doesn't.
All right, you can use mine, sir, because it does say green.
Not so much a concern, but a verification on, probably Jim, you can address this. It's the invoice we got from Amazing Floors for the granite countertops. I noticed it was $5,400. And, can you just real briefly speak to that, please?
Yes, sir. And Director Cook, you may need to back me up on this, but essentially, in the process of getting the countertops for the new office, it was found that we could get it slightly cheaper if the district wanted it itself rather than going through the contractor to purchase those materials. And so that the invoice that you see is the cost for the materials for the countertops for the office.
I know in our bid for those items, although they weren't, our contract with Gakey, although they weren't itemized, we had about $7,600 for stuff like that. You know, I think, as I remember, we had specified Formica countertops. So in a sense, we've already paid for those and for the installation also. Is there any possibility that Gakey will back some of that up?
We're
I
taking
don't
it out.
believe, have we? For the laminate.
That, we haven't paid for that, so that should be able to be,
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Is it possible we could get Gakey to back that out?
Yes, yes. And also included with those granite tops is the undermount kitchen sink
Yeah.
and the lavatories
Yeah.
for the both
So,
restrooms.
yeah, if Gakey backs those out, that's going to put us
Yeah.
well below 5,000 on that. So that was the only
Yes.
concern I had. I'm willing to, consent that item.
Yes,
Okay?
I was looking at that too myself.
Yeah, figured you would be.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Herb Cook, Director Cook's been monitoring the situation over at the Giddings office, and so thank you for that. All right, so I'll entertain a motion regarding 3C, the invoices received greater than 5,000.
I so moved.
Hear a motion?
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Right, with that, the invoices, the motion passes. Okay, moving on to agenda item 4A, announcements. I know Director Rogers last week or 2 weeks ago was at the Groundwater Summit, and she would like to speak on regarding the Groundwater Summit.
Well, just briefly, is this on?
You can have this one.
Okay. Texas Alliance of Groundwater Districts has a summit every year in San Antonio, and this year it was attended by over 400 people, showing an enormous interest in groundwater. Under texasgroundwater.org, they have a website, and soon they will be putting up the entire conference on their YouTube channel. And I can recommend several of the sessions to you to see. One of them was put on by the Texas Water Development Board, the Tex Mesonet, which is a huge network of weather stations that they're establishing across Texas. They're soliciting locations. I don't think there are any currently in our district. It requires a 40 by 40 plot to be dedicated to a station, but then the Water Development Board comes in and puts in a $20,000 weather station there, and it becomes part of the network. And they have a phone number to contact anybody that might be interested. There was a section on managing groundwater in drought. That panel discussion was quite good. Charlie Flatten of Hayes Trinity Groundwater Conservation District was on the panel, and he had a lot to say about the drought and about education, and he was very good. The keynote address was given by the new executive director of Texas Parks and Wildlife, and he had a really good visual comparison of the drought of 2011, the drought of 2022, and the ongoing drought of 2023. It was very instructive. So I just wanted to recommend that to anybody who's interested in the groundwater, because there were a lot of good speakers.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you, Kit. Any other announcements? Okay, with that, we'll move on to agenda item 4B of the regular agenda, continued public hearing regarding the pending applications of Thomas Turfgrass for operating permits for 4 wells in Bastrop County under district well numbers 58-47-9-0018, 58-47-9-0021, 58-47-9-0022, and 58-47-9-0020 in the Carrizo Aquifer, and to withdraw a total production of 3,950 acre-feet of water per year, combined to be used for irrigation purposes on the 6 Spriggs Farm in Bastrop and Lee counties. The applicant further has requested to aggregate annual and instantaneous withdrawals from the 4 wells. With that, I'd like to invite up our legal counsel, Natasha Martin, to speak a little on this matter, to start us off.
President Hernandez, if you don't mind, I'd love to stand right here.
Okay, as long as you have a microphone,
Okay, great.
then we can hear you.
All right, thank you. So good evening. For our group here, my name is Natasha Martin, General Counsel of the district. And President Hernandez has asked me to go over and review the process for the public hearing. So I'll do that. And he's also asked me to cover some jurisdictional questions that have come up from the last public hearing. So I'll go over the process, but today we are going to conduct the continued public hearing. So the public hearing started in July, and it was continued to today. And so for anybody that didn't get the opportunity to provide public comments at the last public hearing, this is your opportunity. You'll go first, but then for anyone else that wants to put on additional comments, we ask for those comments to not be repetitive from what you already stated in the July hearing, but you will also have an opportunity to get comments on the record. And so President Hernandez has established a time limit of 3 minutes per speaker for the public hearing. We've allotted an hour, but if we end up knocking on that hour, President Hernandez, it's up to his discretion to keep going. So I just wanted to go over those highlights. As a reminder, the board is not answering questions. during the public hearing. And if you didn't get the opportunity to speak, you'll go first. We don't have a list of those folks, so we'll just announce that it's your opportunity, and then we'll go from there. When you get to the podium, please state your name for the record clearly so we can capture that. And after we go through those that didn't speak in July, we'll call names from those that signed up. So with that, I'm gonna go over.
Ms.
Yes.
Martin, can I just interject? Because the speakers that we do have are the coalition, and we have spoken with the Watsons, and they've agreed to consolidate the coalition's comments and presentation here today, or their public comments. And so since there's a coalition of about 22 landowners, they were gracious enough to organize and consolidate. So there are 5 coalition members that will speak, and I've granted them 25 minutes contiguously for those 5. Other than that, it's just Thomas Turfgrass representatives
Okay.
that I have signatures
Well,
for.
and I would say any others, and since you're granting 5 minutes for the 5 minutes each for the coalition, all the other speakers would get the same amount of time.
Fine, sure. But I do not, as of right now, I don't have anyone else signed up, so if you'd like to speak, please sign up.
Okay? So if you want to sign up, you can submit your requests right here to our district secretary, Peggy Campion. Did I say that right? Okay, all right. Okay, thank you, President Hernandez. So concerns were raised at the last public hearing on the Thomas Turfgrass application that we wanted to clear up whether or not the district actually has authority to act on those concerns. And so President Hernandez essentially charged me with going through a list of things we heard and things we didn't hear, just to review that before tonight. The district, the purpose of the district, a lot of y'all have heard this before, but it comes straight out of Chapter 36, which is from the Texas Water Code. It's the body of law, part of the body of law that governs groundwater conservation districts. So the purpose of the district is to provide for the conservation, preservation, protection, recharging, and the prevention of waste of groundwater and of groundwater reservoirs or their subdivisions, and to control subsidence caused by the withdrawal of groundwater. And that's consistent with the objectives of the Texas Constitution. So that purpose also includes jurisdiction over, and I'll go over a list, conducting aquifer monitoring, planning and determining long-term desired future conditions of the aquifers, regulating groundwater production inside the jurisdiction of the district, so Bastrop and Lee counties, balancing aquifer protection with private property rights and making decisions about groundwater applications, regulating the transport of groundwater within certain boundaries in the district, impacts to other wells in the district, impacts to aquifers in the district, impacts to land surface or subsidence caused by pumping, and impacts to surface water resources, enforcing its rules and Chapter 36 against anyone who violates that framework. This list is not exhaustive, but is the high level of what we're charged with doing within the district. Although the district does have broad authority when it comes to regulating groundwater use, there are some limits and there are things outside of that scope that I just went over. And so what happens when something's outside of those limits is the district likes to direct you to the appropriate body. Could be local, could be body or state agency. And so we heard things last July about impacts to wildlife. So for example, we heard about impacts to the Houston toad that could possibly be harmed by the production in the application. So you would direct those concerns to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and if there are other species, there may be other species of concern, start with Texas Parks and Wildlife. They may even direct you to U.S. Fish and Wildlife. We heard about traffic concerns, that is outside the district's jurisdiction. If you've got concerns about traffic from operations, we would direct you to the county. We've also heard concerns about dust, though that is wholly outside of the jurisdiction of the district. Depending upon the complaint, it could be raised with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. The same goes with stormwater runoff. So stormwater is not groundwater, so we wouldn't have jurisdiction over stormwater runoff. Concerns with soil quality or soil contamination would not be directed at the district. And regulating the time of day that they pump would not be part of the district's authority unless the statute came back and gave us some sort of authority to regulate the time of pumping as, let's say, like a waste condition. So that's just really high level, but I can answer questions later after the public hearing. But now, as we would open it up to the general manager and hydrogeologist to make some remarks as well on the application.
I would like to just make one statement to the board, to the directors here. For the sake of the hearing and for the recording, if we could just be mindful when a director has the floor and is asking questions, if you can let them just ask the questions and have the floor, and then when they're done, then someone else could take the floor and ask their questions. Otherwise, the recording, they're not going to know who's asking the question. So if we can maintain a little bit of organization with be mindful as to who has the floor and not interrupt them, and then we'll give each director a chance to have the floor. With that, Mr. Totten.
Thank you, President Hernandez, members of the board. As part of your packet, you've received an amended permit that was prepared for the purposes of the hearing today. To clarify a couple of questions that have come up, the permit that is currently pending before the district is the permit that was originally filed, which was for 3,950 acre-feet of water. That request was reflected in the original recommendation prepared by staff and provided to you back in July. After the public hearing and working with our consultants, we developed a secondary recommendation that's now been provided to you, which comes in at 1,800 acre-feet of water per year. Additionally, the new permit includes provisions for additional monitoring, looking at impacts in both the Carrizo and the upper and lower formations around the Carrizo to see how that level of production might impact the adjacent formations. That's pretty well the highlights of the proposed new permit. With that, do you have?
Yeah, I've got some questions. I'll start off with the questions, Mr. Tom. All right, so just to confirm, the original application from Thomas that was submitted, I believe, in October of '22, that has not been amended or changed. So they're still asking for, the ask is for 3,950 acre-feet per year and four wells.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That is the request.
Okay. And right now, the district, we're currently in a drought state. Which drought, are we in D4 drought conditions right now?
Yes, sir. I was going to touch on that in the GM report.
Okay.
All but one corner of Bastrop County is in D4, which would be the most exceptional drought, the highest category.
Okay. And Thomas Turf Grass right now, they've got 3 locations, is my understanding. One is about 1,000 acres, and they have one existing non-exempt permit for 2,200 acre-feet in the Simsboro. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then the other location, I believe, is north of 290. That location has no non-exempt wells, and there is no permit, a non-exempt permit.
Yes, sir. It's approximately 500 acres, and it is served by non-exempt irrigation wells. Yes, sir.
No, by exempt?
I'm sorry, by exempt
By
irrigation.
agricultural exempt. So that location is serviced by solely agricultural exempt wells. They do not have it. So now this is a new location, a third location, approximately 1,000 acres, 970, and there's like 30 more pending.
Yeah, 970, 1060, somewhere in there. Yes, sir.
Okay. And my understanding is that recently you went out and had like a site visit, actually both to Thomas Turfgrass, you visited them and you visited some of the landowners. Could you give a report or some insight as to what you saw?
Yes, sir. I went out probably mid-July, I believe, and then I was back out again last week. So there are definitely a lot of dry ponds. I've been previously on the Watson property in July of 2022. There were definitely some springs in the lowlands that were flowing. They showed me a neighboring property with an alluvial well that was currently flowing at the time. Yewa Creek is kind of hard to gauge. It certainly appeared higher, but the flow rate was it's hard to put a finger on it. But coming back in 2022, a lot of the lowlands that had some lowland springs and some seeps that were definitely producing water in 2022. Summer 2023, they've all definitely dried up. You can see areas that had been, judging by the vegetation, had been previously, if not wetlands, they had been, more wet than dry, and those areas were now completely dried up. Yewa Creek did appear to be running, if it was running significantly lower. But again, it's more of an elevation than a flow rate. I didn't have a way to gauge flow rates. There were still ponds in the area that were full. There were still some creeks and streams that were running. When I went back in July, I guess in August versus July, one of the creeks actually appeared to be running slightly better than it had been in July. The water quality appeared to have cleared up and the flow rate seemed higher. So it's a mixed bag. It's not total desolation, but then we did see a lot of artesian wells that had stopped flowing, water levels that had dropped sufficiently in those wells that they were not free flowing any longer. So definitely a big change from what there was in 2022. How much of that is continued drought versus production? That's a question for people with PhDs, but there were definitely some changes in the conditions between the 2 years.
Do you know when Thomas Turfgrass completed their exempt well on the new location?
Early July of 2022.
And as you mentioned, Thomas Turfgrass has agreed to implement some monitoring wells in different formations, correct? There's about 3 monitoring wells, I believe, in total?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Okay. And across 3 different formations, I believe the Calvert Bluff, the Carrizo, and the Queen City. Thank you. Did Thomas Turfgrass have to provide a water conservation or drought plan?
By the district rules, if you are required by the state to create a drought plan or a water conservation plan, you have to provide that to the district as part of your application. But the district does not require it from applicants who are not required to have one already.
Okay.
And my understanding is that at the state level, those are primarily for water supply corporations and public water supply utilities greater than the set number of connections.
Okay, and that comes from the state, a state law?
Yes.
Okay. Has Thomas Turfgrass provided any hydrological study from a hydrologist, a professional hydrologist, on the impacts to the aquifer as a result of their permit?
Beyond the pump test data, no, sir.
So just the pump test data is all the data that we received from them. Has the opposition coalition presented any hydrological study to support their requests?
No, sir, not that I've seen.
Okay, let me ask you some questions about the authority and jurisdiction of the Groundwater District. I know Natasha touched on it, but does the Lost Pine District have authority over the health of the trees?
No, sir.
And Houston toad?
Not to my knowledge.
How about wildlife in general?
No, sir.
Dust?
No, I'm pretty sure not.
Does the Lost Pines Groundwater District have authority over trucks and road conditions?
No, sir.
Do we have authority over rainwater runoff and erosion?
No, sir.
Do we have jurisdiction over soil quality?
No, sir.
Do we have jurisdiction over the time of day a permittee pumps the groundwater? And when they can pump their groundwater?
Not under the current rules, or current state law, no, sir.
I mean, I would expect municipalities and aqua and cities would probably be pumping 24 hours a day, rain or shine, drought or no drought. Someone like Aqua, for example.
Depending upon their well fields, I do believe that some of them are probably running close to 24/7 on the major wells.
So those items that I just mentioned, are any of these valid concerns, or any of these valid concerns factors that the district can take into account when granting a permit?
They are definitely valid concerns, but they are not factors that can be directly considered in making the determination of a permit.
So those factors are in Chapter 36 and in our district rules, correct? We have factors that we can take into account.
Yes.
There's about 10 factors that we shall take into account when granting a permit. Those are listed in Chapter 36.113D, includes 7 factors, and then our Lost Pine rules adds another 3 factors on top of those 7, totaling about 10 factors that we can take into account when granting a permit. I'd like to talk to you about the desired future condition, because Dr. Hutchinson's study, some of his analysis has to deal with the desired future condition. Can you confirm the 2070 district-wide average desired future condition, or the DFC, for the Carrizo that the GMA 12 approved in late 2021?
Yes, sir. The desired future condition, an average drawdown district-wide within the Carrizo is 134 feet.
Okay, so that is the planned desired future groundwater drawdown in the Carrizo expected for the district over the next 46 years to the year 2070, and that number is 134 feet of drawdown on average district-wide, correct?
That would be the maximum allowed, yes, sir, district-wide.
Now, the district tried unsuccessfully to lower that drawdown number at the GMA 12, correct?
I believe there was more focus on the Simsboro, but yes, sir, there was some effort on the Carrizo as well.
And there was an effort to lower those numbers. Okay. Now the DFC, this desired future condition, this is one of the factors that we must consider when granting a permit. It's in our district rule 52D8. And the DFCs, that desired future condition, that's calculated based upon all the prior existing permits and do not include this new Thomas Turfgrass permit, correct?
Yes, sir. Being that these DFCs were set in 2021, well before this application was received.
Right. And so they included all the applications up to 2021, and most of the applications. There's some caveats. Yeah. So you take into account most of the existing prior permits, and that's how they came up with the desired future condition at the GMA 12.
There were multiple factors that go into calculating the desired future condition, but that is one.
One of the factors, right? And so there's pumping going on all around this Thomas Turfgrass area currently, right? There's Aqua's pumping. Thomas Turfgrass has 2 existing locations. There's the city of McDade, Lee County Water Supply, just to name a few, right? They're pumping currently in that area.
Yes, sir.
And it's correct that the Lee County groundwater is being affected by pumping that's going on from outside the district?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
So, for example, Vista Ridge in Burleson County and pumping from Caldwell County are impacting the district?
Caldwell County is not impacting this yet.
Not yet.
The Vista Ridge is. Yes.
Okay. I would like to show on the screen there. This is from the district website. So if you go to the district website and you click on About the District and then you click on Maps, this is the 2070 Carrizo drawdown map. And you'll see that roughly here between Page and Elgin along 290, just north of 290, there's going to be a planned desired future condition in the year 2070 of about 50 feet of drawdown. Is that correct? Right here where my cursor is. You can see the cursor?
Yes, sir, that's the model prediction.
That's the modeling projection. Again, this does not include this Thomas Turfgrass request. And you can see, so some analysis, just looking at it, you'll see two like epicenters here, right? You see up in Burleson County, just across the Lee County line, you see a big depression. And then down by Caldwell County, also on the Bastrop County line, in Caldwell County, there's another cone of depression down there. Can you explain what those two points are showing us?
Yes, sir. So that northern depression that you're seeing, that is the impacts of the Vista Ridge well field producing from the Carrizo. And then the southern cone of depression is the Guadalupe Blanco River Authority and Alliance Regional Water Authority well fields located in Caldwell County that have not come online yet.
Okay, they're planned to be coming online. I know they keep saying 6 months from now, 6 months from now, and it keeps getting postponed. But soon, they're expecting to put that well field online in Caldwell County, right on the Bastrop County line. So you see that these are predicted drawdowns irrespective of Thomas turfgrass, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'd like to submit this for the, into the record, this map. How many known wells are there that neighbor Thomas turfgrass, this new location in the Carrizo?
From the wells that we analyzed as part of Dr. Hutchinson's report, there were 4 wells that were Carrizo.
So we had 4 known wells that neighbor Thomas turfgrass in the Carrizo. They're about 2 miles away.
Of the wells that were analyzed for that report, yes.
At the wells that were analyzed in Dr. Hudson's report, because those are the wells that we knew of. Okay. I'll ask this of Dr. Hutchinson, but do you know the most recent study that Dr. Hutchinson did for, I believe it was for 2.2 acre feet capped? Would you be able to tell me what the predicted model drawdowns are for that scenario in the Carrizo?
No, it's top of my head.
All right, I'll ask Dr. Hutchinson those questions. By law, what's the distance that the district must notify landowners regarding a new permitted application?
Per Chapter 36, there is no specification on what notification is required. It's left to the district's discretion.
And our rules state what do our rules have regarding notifying property owners of a new permit?
It's all property owners within 5,000 feet of a proposed well.
And that's what we did in this case?
Yes, sir. We said notice to all property owners within 5,000 feet. Chapter 36 requires notice to be published in at least one paper in common circulation within the district. We published in all 4 of the papers that are available within the district, and then did the mail notice on the website and at the county courthouses.
And what needs to be included in those newspaper notices, at a minimum?
The applicant's name, the location, proposed use of water, proposed volume of water, and I can't recall the fifth requirement for Chapter 36. Oh, the time and date of the hearing.
Time and date of the hearing. Thank you. Thank you, Natasha. Couple of questions. Is there a process to address the long-term groundwater planning?
Yes, sir, that's what you brought up previously, the desired future conditions, which conducted through groundwater. For us, it's conducted through groundwater management area 12, which is the 5 districts in the central Queen City area.
So this map was developed as part of the long-term planning process? From that, okay. Can the district mandate mitigation by a permittee? And by mitigation, I mean paying to fix a neighbor's well. Can we mandate that?
My understanding under current law is we cannot. No, sir.
It's a voluntary basis?
That's my understanding, yes, sir.
Does section 7.1A of the rules allow the conversion of an exempt well to a non-exempt well?
Without seeing 7.1A in front of me, I believe that's what it does. I know that we have in the past converted test wells or even excluded wells, previous oil and gas wells, into other categories of wells. I'm not sure if 7.2A was the rule that guided that.
Well, let me read you Rule 7.1A. 7.1A is changes to exempt wells. This is our district rule, Rule 7.1A. Changes to exempt wells. No person may make any change to an exempt well that would cause the exempt well to become a non-exempt well until the well owner files and receives district approval of an application for an operating permit under Section 5 of these rules. So it seems as though from this rule that upon approval of the application for an operating permit, the district can convert an exempt well to a non-exempt well.
President Hernandez, that is a correct reading. They would have to submit an application first. An exempt user can't just start pumping the amount of a non-exempt user. They would have to apply and get approval first.
Thank you. Those are all the questions I had, Mr. Taunton. Any other director would like to ask Mr. Taunton questions?
Jim, so four wells were studied, but surely there's more than 4 wells out there.
So 4 of the wells that were studied by Dr. Hutchinson, I believe we used 16 to 20. I don't recall the exact number, but 4 of those ended up being Carrizo. The rest were either Queen City, Calvert, or Calvert Bluff.
Okay, but there were more than.
Yes.
Yes, there were more than 4. Just 4 were in the Carrizo. Any other questions of Mr. Taunton?
I'd like to. Hello.
Yep.
Natasha, some of these may pertain, to you also. First, just for clarification for me, we're talking about the 4 aggregated wells that are in the permit before us now. The Palmacal well, that's an agricultural exempt well. That's why it's at 180 feet.
The Palmacal well was a pre-existing well on the property. I don't know what it was used for. I think it may have been used for limited irrigation prior to the purchase by Thomas Turfgrass. But its productive capacity is basically limited. It can't produce more than 180 feet based on the way it was drilled and equipped.
Okay.
I'm sorry, 180 gallons per minute, I should say.
Yeah. The 4 wells under consideration, unless I'm misreading the permit, they could all be pumped at their gallon per minute capacity all at the same time, so they could all be turned on at their capacity as long as they didn't exceed the acre feet per year, and they could pump 55, 80 gallons a minute if they were all turned on.
Yes, sir.
Would that, I'm concerned that if that were to happen, and I suspect it will, would that unduly affect some of the other exempt wells close to the well field?
So the instantaneous production rate really relates to how big of a cone of depression occurs when the wells are running. So yes, sir, if all 4 of them were running, then you would have a cone of depression extending off of each of those wells based on the size of which is going to be based on the aquifer properties and the rate that they're producing at.
And I didn't see that addressed in Dr. Hutchinson's presentation to it, was it? And did I miss that, or what was some attention given to that possibility that there could be an undue effect, a temporary exaggerated or effect on local wells if they were all turned on at once?
So the work that Dr. Hutchinson did not incorporate that. That's addressed through a different set of modeling that was not done. It's a Tice equation, which would give you kind of a linear estimation of how that cone of depression would exist from each of those wells. That was not incorporated in the study, was it?
And I know that Recharge has 14 wells permitted, as I understand it, close by the Thomas Turfgrass wells. Has there been any analysis done on the effect of local exempt wells when and if Recharge's wells are activated?
So the recharge wells are all Simsboro wells, which would be in that area. If you look at Simsboro, Calvert Bluff, and then the Carrizo.
Yeah.
So there would be the Calvert Bluff would be in between. We have not looked specifically at the combinatorial effect of those two. As I recall, when we have looked at, and this was using the old dam, so the numbers have probably changed, but in the old dam, what we saw was almost an order of magnitude decrease in drawdowns as you move from formation to formation. So if you have a localized drawdown around recharge of 300 feet, the formation above might be 30 feet, the formation above that might be 3. It wasn't a rule of thumb, but it was kind of a trend that we saw when we did look at that in the old dams.
Yes. But the Calvert Bluff wells, especially, I suppose would be more affected than the Carrizo exempt wells.
Yes, sir.
To me, I don't know, that's a concern, that we at least need to look at in some way, so at least we know what we're getting into. I know you've been out in that area on certainly more than one occasion. Did you notice any runoff or evidence of runoff from the Thomas Turfgrass property, any of their 3 properties?
So at the time I was out there, it was in the middle of the second driest of July in the history of state record keeping. So I did not see any evidence of runoff. There was some water accumulating on the property, and some of the low points they said to collect water, but I didn't see any signs of water runoff coming off of the property. Yes, sir.
I mean, we were presented at our last meeting with a whole bunch of pictures showing runoff. Could you corroborate or any of that, or
I believe a lot of those pictures were taken earlier in the spring, and that was runoff being driven largely by the rains that we received this spring. Like I said, when I was there, they had been running, there was evidence that Tibbetts had run, but there wasn't signs of the runoff that, like what's documented in those photos. I mean, aside from, you could see old flows, but there wasn't current water outside of the collection areas.
but what I hear you saying, it was unclear whether that was a rainwater runoff or irrigation water runoff or a combination of the two. You could,
Well, like I said, I was there in July, so there hadn't been rainwater. Now, the pictures you're referring to, I believe those were taken after the rains that we had late last fall and early this spring. The landowners can speak to that better than I can.
Last spring or even previous to that, have any of the landowners contacted your office or staff concerning runoff from that they thought was probably from irrigation?
I don't recall my primary point of contact. I've been out to the Watson property starting in July of 2022, and the main concern at those points of time was water, the actual pumping related. The runoff conversation I recall having with them, I don't recall them being concurrent with the start of irrigation on that property, but I may be mistaken. I think I've slept at least once since then.
Let me catch up with myself here. On our Form 200, I take it that Section 7, I agree to avoid waste and achieve water conservation, as Thomas Turfgrass signed off on that.
Yes, sir.
Have they given you any way, that they, any concrete plan how they plan to achieve that?
Aside from statements about using high efficiency irrigation systems, no, sir.
And for Natasha, although we can't require a permittee to mitigate area wells that are affected, can that be negotiated into a permit contract?
Well, the Thomases are here, I could speak to them about it, but we can't make it a condition of the permit without agreement, in my opinion.
I mean, it can be negotiated by mutual consent into a contract, though.
If we were gonna do it, I would recommend incorporating it into the permit, but because that's consistent with the other permits that have voluntary mitigation. And so it could happen, but it's got to be by agreement.
Yes, okay.
And can I follow up on one note about waste? So there is a special condition number 6 that does say any such discharge, after describing what the waste could be, could constitute waste, and the permit would be subject to revocation. So it's just a restatement of a rule,
Yeah,
but it is included in the permit.
Yeah, I saw that also. I think that's it, but let me just review here just quickly. The folks we heard from at our last meeting about this, we're talking about some possible deficiencies in the permit or the permit application, ownership, runoff, and I think you've already spoken to the Form 100 permit being changed to a Form 200. But what about the ownership issues? I know that we got a memo from you late today, and I haven't had a chance to look over that. And I suppose some of the ownership issues were covered in that. Could you speak to that, please?
So our office has been looking into the ownership issue since last Thursday, in addition to the initial permit review. And so we've still received documents up to this afternoon, but based on our initial review of the documents we have, Thomas Turfgrass does have a interest and right to the groundwater. We are looking at an additional demonstration to sort out some entities that own the groundwater, but Thomas Turfgrass was leased a right to pump groundwater where the wells will be located and are located.
Would that require revisiting the permit applications, do you think?
No, I think it would be just a supplement to the file.
Thank you, Elvis. That's all the questions I have.
Any other director would like to have questions to Mr. Totten or Natasha?
Yes.
There's,
Just real quickly.
there's also a button at the bottom. Why don't you just use Phil's, because those are kind of complicated.
Thank you.
There's actually 2 buttons on these.
Okay, question. We're talking about agricultural use, and this is a question I have asked Ms. Martin, and we don't have a clarification on it yet. Description of agricultural use is growing feeder fiber, and so we checked and we found out that golf course grass is not covered, but yet we know that growing grass, hay, and the pasture to feed cows is agriculture. Do we know where growing turf grass falls? And I'm not saying I know because I don't, it's just a question I have. And I also wanted to confirm that I understood, I'll wait and see. Natasha, do you have an answer to that before I go on?
So I've looked at whether or not watering turf grass is a beneficial use, so we would need to start there. And so Chapter 36 requires the use of the water be put to a beneficial use. Beneficial use does include agriculture, and that's where you're coming in with wanting the definition for agricultural use. So agricultural use does include horticulture, and it also, let's see, under Chapter 36, it includes any use or activity involving agriculture, but also includes irrigation. I believe that it is kind of a nuance and interpretation, but I do think that given the broad scope of beneficial use in Chapter 36, given that there's a catch-all, which is any beneficial use, any use deemed beneficial to the user, I would say that there their use would qualify, given that anything that's deemed beneficial, if it's not waste. And so that's where we come in and determine whether it's waste or not. So I do think that their use is beneficial under the law.
Thank you.
My other question is for Mr. Totten. My understanding is that the aquifers above and below the Carrizo will be impacted because of vertical flow, not as much as the horizontal flow. But the rec law and the cover bluff will provide some of the water ultimately. Are we doing monitoring wells in those formations, and am I correct in that observation?
That is what Bill's modeling results have shown, is that there will be vertical flow. Again, it is modeling results, so plus or minus a margin of error. But yes, the model does indicate that, and that is what Tom Turfgrass is committed to providing in the draft permit, additional monitoring in those upper and lower formations.
Okay, I just wanted to note that it's not just the Carrizo that's going to be impacted. I also understand that the rec law provides may provide a lot of the spring flow, but I don't believe we have studies to prove that yet.
That would be an accurate statement.
Okay, thank you.
Any other director? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Totten. With that, I'd like to ask Dr. Hutchinson, our hydrologist consultant from LRE Water. Thank you for being here, Dr. Hutchinson. Pleasure. You've created a report, Thomas Turfgrass Permit Application Review Pumping Simulations, and that report is in the packet, this month's packet. I'd like to read from it a little bit. You state in the summary of requested production, you state, in their February 22, 2023 letter, Thomas Turfgrass noted that the requested amount of production of 3,950 acre-feet is, quote, is the amount estimated to be needed based on turfgrass irrigation needs, assuming little to no rainfall, parentheses, drought conditions, end quote. And you also go on to state that no supporting information was provided to document the basis for this estimate. Also, no information was provided on estimated pumping in years with average or higher than average rainfall conditions. Is that still true, that we have not received or that you have not seen any supporting information to document that estimate?
That's correct.
Okay. And so their request, as stated, assumes little to no rainfall, drought conditions. And so you took it upon yourself to inject rainfall conditions into your studies. You actually took the last 50 years of rainfall and took that into account, and you assumed that there would be this equivalent 50 years worth of rainfall, and then you did analysis based using rainfall.
Yeah, it was rainfall and evaporation. The idea was if Thomas Turfgrass had built their, had started irrigating in 1954, what would have looked like from 54 to 2022. Just add the Thomas Turfgrass irrigation based on these assumptions into that historic hydrologic record.
To your knowledge, has the opposition coalition presented any sort of hydrological study by a hydrogeologist?
I've seen nothing.
Okay. Let's see. In the summary of results and conclusions, the first bullet item, you state, an analysis of irrigation water needs, An analysis of irrigation water needs demonstrated that the average irrigation needs ranges from 1,800 to 2,200 acre-feet per year. So what you're telling us is that the average irrigation need falls within that range?
Right, the 3950 request was based on drought conditions. My analysis showed the 3950 is an appropriate estimate of a drought condition for the 970 acres, given the climatic conditions from 1954 to 2022. But as rainfall increases in certain years, the irrigation demand goes down. So then the average, based on the range of conditions I looked at, the 3950 as a cap, then that long-term average from 54 to 22 would range from 1,800 to 2,200 acre feet a year.
Okay. And I asked this question of Mr. Totten, and he punted it to you, so I'm going to ask you here. In your analysis, in your study, there is some drawdown expected by the model, and there are 4 known Carrizo wells that you studied within 2 miles of the Thomas Turfgrass proposed wells. What is the predicted drawdown for those, on average, roughly a range, for those 4 Carrizo wells that are about 2 miles from Thomas Turfgrass?
Under
the 2.2 cap. So you had done an initial study,
Right.
and then you came back and did a secondary study. You didn't repeat all the wells, but you took some sample wells and you redid your studies based on capping it at 2.2.
Yeah, 2,200.
2,200.
Yeah, so basically, using the original analysis, where it ranged from very low to 3,950 in each year, then what I did is I took that pumping, those pumping numbers, and if it was above 2,200, I set it at 2,200. So that's where the cap comes in. So at the Thomas Turfgrass site, the drawdown under the original application ranged from 40 to 50 feet, with a range of essentially 10 feet down to 90 feet, depending on what year it was. The sort of overall average was between 40 and 50 feet. When you cap the production at 2,200, the drawdown range is between 30 and 40 feet.
And that's at the Thomas Turfgrass site.
At the Thomas Turfgrass site.
Right.
Now, when you move a couple miles away, you're in the
Let's talk about
the 16-foot range under the 2,200, where under the original proposal it was in the 24-foot range.
this for the wells in the Carrizo.
Correct.
So before, in the 3,950, it was, again?
In 2 miles away,
Yeah.
on the order of 24 feet, and when you cap it at 2,200, that takes it down to about 16, 17 feet.
16, 17 feet, assuming a capped of 2,200.
Correct.
And that's for the wells in the Carrizo that are roughly about 2 miles away.
Right,
And those are the most impacted wells?
yes.
So, those are the most impacted wells. So now, wells that are not in the Carrizo, what's the predicted modeling in terms of the drawdown for neighboring wells not in the Carrizo?
Whoops. Okay, so a well 5 miles away in the Calvert Bluff, under the original proposal, we're looking at 4 feet or so, and under the original proposal, oh, excuse me, I got this backwards. Under the original proposal, it was around 4 feet, and under the cap proposal, it was 3 to 3.5 feet. But that's 5 miles away.
Okay. So just to compare, and I spoke about the DFCs, so these are the desired future conditions. So in the Carrizo, the desired future condition, this is from our management plan, and these were approved, these numbers were approved in 2021 by the GMA 12, And we just approved the management plan in May and updated the management plan. So this is where the source of, this is section 5 from our management plan. So this shows the desired future condition is 134 feet. It did not take into account Thomas. And then once you do take into account the Thomas turfgrass, for the Carrizo, you're looking at an additional, you said maybe 16 to 17 feet.
Correct.
Okay, so relatively, just to compare, just to have some comparison as to what's the desired future condition versus what's predicted by the model for the Thomas. So it's 16 to 17 feet, okay. So I would like to add this page into the record, which is our DFCs. All right. And you mentioned quite a bit the shallow flow system in your study.
Correct.
And the shallow flow system, can you give a brief definition or describe what it's not an aquifer, correct? Officially, it's not an official aquifer.
It's not an official aquifer. It comprises basically the outcrop area of all the aquifers. So remember, the aquifers here dip down quite steeply. And so the shallow part of each one is the outcrop area that receives the recharge or provides water to the alluvium, which then provides water to the springs, or to the streams. So the way the model was constructed, this layer 2 or the shallow flow system is the mechanism to move water from the outcrop, from the surface water to the outcrop area and then down to the down dip area. So in this area, the shallow flow system is part of the Carrizo.
Okay.
You saw that on the yellow, essentially the yellow stripe on the map. That represents the shallow flow system, or layer 2 of the model, which is part of the Carrizo.
And your studies predict that 46% of the water is going to be coming not from the Carrizo, but from this shallow flow layer 2.
Right. The model runs that were completed under the 3950 and under the 2200 cap scenarios both showed that basically about 10% of the water is going to come from Carrizo storage. About 46% of the water is going to come from the shallow flow system, that outcrop area.
Okay. I was trying to find that, but I couldn't find it. All right. I'd like to talk a little bit about this top diagram that you've got there. So this is one of the neighboring wells. Its distance is at 1.5 miles from the Thomas Turfgrass location, and it's layer 8. So this is a Calvert Bluff well. That's 1.5 miles away. And so what this is showing us, correct me if I'm wrong, the green line is the DFC run. So this was the S19 baseline, what we showed in that last map. That's the green line. So that's kind of without Thomas, turfgrass, just what we've desired future condition, what's baked in already. That's the green line.
There's one thing to make sure is clear. What we were showing before, what we were talking about before was the 1954 to 2022 simulation where the pumping varied year to year.
By rainfall.
By rainfall.
Yep.
These runs were done under the DFC condition, which assumed no variation in rainfall. So in these runs, I'm not running 3950, I'm running the average pumping. And so it makes it a comparable apples to apples situation, because the green line represents the DFC run, where there is no variation in recharge and it's constant pumping essentially. And so then I add the Thomas turfgrass in the black and the red, I think.
In the blue.
The blue and the red.
Blue, red, and, yep.
Yeah, and then the other one was the maximum, where I was like, okay, don't worry about the average, let's run the 3950.
Just
and
full,
see what happens.
full 30 and 50.
And so those are the 4 scenarios which are distinct from the yearly variation from 54 to 22.
Okay. And I remember you told us that the model is good when you run different runs and compare
Exactly.
between them. So
Exactly.
that's what this is doing. You're comparing between the different runs. So what this is showing you is that when for this particular well in the Calvert Bluff, a mile and a half away, Thomas Turfgrass's input to the drawdown is pretty small compared to the DFC, to the desired future condition.
Correct.
There's really very little change between the desired future condition, what's already baked in, and when you added Thomas on top of that, it's just like a tiny little difference.
That's exactly the correct interpretation. That this shows that under this scenario, the Thomas Turfgrass pumping a mile and a half away in the Calvert Bluff is probably within the range of the error of the model.
Okay. So even when you add Thomas Turfgrass in there, without Thomas Turfgrass, you're going to be expecting this type of drawdown. So even without Thomas, that's the green line, and then you would expect between now and the year 2070, there's going to be about 120 foot drawdown, roughly from 400 to 280 or 290, maybe 130 feet drawdown.
Right.
And that's just baked in even without Thomas Turfgrass.
That's due to the other pumping that was included in S19, which you've already shown.
Which I've already shown, the Vista Ridge pumping and the other pumping down to our south.
And the Caldwell pumping,
Right.
yes.
Now, this other well down here, this one is in layer 6. So this one has slightly different, obviously, characteristics.
Right.
And what this one is showing that about an additional maybe 10 feet or so is what's the blue and the red line. So the green line is just the normal what's baked into the desired future condition.
Right.
And then the blue line and the red line lower that by maybe, on average, maybe 10 feet. And then it's consistent, and then it gets a little better over time.
Right, you can see that when it starts to level off, that's hitting essentially what you would call a sustainable level of pumping, where it's already captured whatever it's going to capture, and now it's in a new steady state, a new equilibrium.
Okay. And then this next well, the 467, this one is in the Carrizo. This is in layer 7.
Right.
This one is a Carrizo, one of the 4 that you've analyzed. The 4 neighboring Carrizo wells. This is one of them. It's at 1.9 miles away, and this one is showing about. Now, granted, this was not capped, but it's showing about 25 foot drawdown.
Correct.
And this was the non-capped scenario that you've said is reduced down to 16 or 17 feet.
Correct.
when it is capped. Okay. Thank you for that. Let's see. Question on, and I do want to bring up this well 467 since let me stay with that. So this is from our Lost Pines well database that we have online. It's on the internet. You can go to Lost Pines website and you can click on the well database. And these are the water levels for the Carrizo neighboring well that's 1.9 miles away, well 467. The district has been monitoring this well for the past 2 years, since 2022. And we do see that it was steady all throughout 22, even despite the drought and despite the spring rains. It was pretty steady. And then all of a sudden, from March through July, there was a significant drawdown of about 28 feet in this particular well. So this is concerning to me because currently Thomas at most is pumping 400 acre feet currently. So to see a 25-foot drawdown given 400 acre feet is a little bit of concern. So, and this is in your packet as well. And, okay, you did state that the shallow flow, layer flow system is not an official aquifer recognized by the state of Texas.
Well, it's not, what it is the portion that is over layer 7 or the Carrizo, is part of the Carrizo aquifer.
So-
It's the outcrop area of that official aquifer.
Oh, it's the outcrop, okay, so,
It's
okay,
the outcrop area,
of that
it
aquifer.
covers-
Okay, so it is,
covers all the aquifers have an outcrop area,
Yeah.
and that's all captured in layer 2. So when the model cells are categorized, there's a layer and there's an aquifer. So in this area, layer 2 is part of the aquifer 7 or the Carrizo.
thank you, because you do state in one of your conclusions that we do need to monitor this outcrop area.
Yes.
Okay. But the outcrop area is outside of Thomas Turfgrass's property. So we would have to go to other neighbors or a rights of way or something in order to set up.
Or as part of the overall monitoring program of the district.
Yeah.
That remark was not intended to be necessarily a recommendation for a specific well that Thomas Turfgrass would provide.
Right.
It was more of a general, we need to be monitoring this shallow flow system, not only for this permit, but for others too.
Yeah, so we need to take that into account, just generally as part of our monitoring program.
Exactly.
Thank you, okay.
And President Hernandez, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Special Condition 7 already does allow for that outcrop monitoring in the right-of-way.
In rights of way. Okay, thank you. And you do state that the current groundwater availability model, the GAM, you do state that it's not robust enough to evaluate these impacts with high confidence.
Exactly, because most of the area has not had very large pumping, so as soon as you have very large concentrated pumping, the reliability of the model goes down, so it should guide you in the sense of, like we talked about, comparing scenarios and to design or look for good places for monitoring wells to confirm conclusions that are drawn from the scenarios.
But the GAM, the groundwater availability model, is the best available science that we have currently?
Yes.
Right, but folks, the next agenda item actually is to, once we get past this agenda item, the next agenda item for tonight is to pursue a Bureau of Reclamation grant to improve locally that GAM model.
Correct.
All right, we'll talk about that in the next agenda item, but we are trying to reach out and get a grant to improve locally that model.
Right.
Thank you. That's all I have for Dr. Hutchinson. Here you go, Phil.
I have one question, it's almost rhetorical. What happens to the area landowners exempt wells in general when the 14 recharge wells totaling 36,000 acre feet kick in? What should area folks expect to happen to their well and their groundwater levels?
Well, it's my understanding the recharge project was baked into the DFC in S19, wasn't it, Jim?
Correct.
Yeah, so a lot of that big drawdown that you would see in those S19 runs, that's largely the NDOT recharge project.
Yeah.
So the expectation is that water levels are going to drop.
What do you mean by drop?
Well, drop in consistent with the S19, because just like President Hernandez has pointed out that the simulations they did show what would happen when Thomas Turfgrass is added to S19.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Recharge's project is already baked into S19. So,
Yeah, but what can,
we're
what-
seeing,
Right there.
these kinds of
Right there.
drawdowns associated with that.
Yeah,
So that's got recharge baked in.
yeah, I understand that. But once recharge does come online, what's going to happen to the area wells?
Water levels will go down.
I mean, 10 feet, 50 feet, 100 feet?
It depends on where you are and how
Yeah.
close you are to those wells. Closer to the recharge wells, the more the drawdown.
Yeah. So some of these landowners could expect their wells to really just go dry and not be able to just be beyond hope for lowering pumps and stuff like that.
I don't know enough about the details of where those wells are located to be able to answer that in terms of in the context of a mitigation plan.
But Recharge has both, as I remember, Simsboro and Carrizo wells.
No, sir.
No.
They are all
They don't?
Simsboro.
They're all
I
Simsboro.
remember that,
Yeah, they're all Simsboro.
I just want to note that we're not posted to discuss the recharge permit, so, but
Well,
that's the end of your
I'm
question.
discussing drawdown, not the permits themselves, so I think
If I may, I wanted to, you basically were right on the ice analysis. The report, table 4 of that report does have some information on individual wells on a short-term drawdown basis. And when you ask that question of Mr. Totten, the total production of 5580 based on where these wells are, the transmissivities that you can see in table 4, and the 36-hour drawdown for individual wells suggests that the 5580 is probably not going to happen, or probably would not be possible. As the heads lower, the pump won't pump that much, and personally, based on what I've seen, the 5580 is probably a bit of an overstatement in terms of the ability of those wells to turn all at the same time and maintain that level of production.
thanks for that clarification.
Any other director with questions? I did have a question that I missed, Dr. Hutchinson. Is the ongoing drought, this drought that we're in, is that a factor with the creek and streams here, at the springs going low and dry?
Yes, the model simulations demonstrate the combined effect of irrigation and drought combined to lower water levels, to the point where under the Thomas turfgrass we saw in that one chart, the drawdown attributable to Thomas turfgrass would range, even though it would be like in the 20 to 40 feet depending on which scenario it was, it would be anywhere from really 10 feet in the wet years to over 90 feet in the drought years. So you can see that the drought does, independent of the pumping, have an effect on the water levels.
Sure. And during rainy periods, when it's at rain seasons, it should provide like a double benefit, because Thomas turfgrass won't be pumping as much, and we'll have the rains that will replenish.
Correct.
So you get kind of a dual benefit.
And that's part of the management of, this district has dealt with permits that were more or less for municipal use or something akin to municipal use for export. So it was always essentially a constant pumping was being assumed. This is one of the first times you've had to deal with something where the pumping would actually vary. And that made this analysis a little bit different than the kinds you've seen before. And we had to go to this analysis to figure out, well, it's not going to be constant all the time. How is it going to vary and make it realistic to provide some information on what the impacts might be?
Thank you, sir. Any other questions from the directors? Thank you, Dr. Hutchinson.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. With that, we'll move on to public comments now. Let's start with, another one. Right. Item public 4A. All right, so how about we start with, I just got this, Mr. Tom Glass.
I think I'd be first. My name is Tom Glass. I am a landowner about 10 miles north of the area in question, and I have 2 wells up there on the border of Lee and Bastrop County. And I'm here primarily because I'm concerned about my wells and them not going as well as others. And the reason why I decided after I came here not thinking I was going to have anything to contribute, but I decided to contribute because I heard a legal opinion from your legal advisor to you guys this evening, and I agreed with her on a lot of what she said, but I think I disagree on some. She was responding to the question of beneficial use, and the definition of beneficial use and how to apply it to this particular use. What I heard her say is that beneficial use is a very vague term and subject to interpretation. And after she went through a lot of, on one hand and then the other hand, she finally decided, well, probably this use can be included in beneficial use. But what I heard, because I want, when we're in a hole, and I think you ought to stop digging. I don't want to add any more pumping to the aquifer that's going to affect my grandchildren. And I don't want to even take a chance at going beyond desired future conditions. I think it's within your discretion. That's a legal word. They talk about abuse of discretion in the law, and a lot of times they will try to second guess you in courts whether you abused your discretion. I'm here to say that I think that when you look at the definition of beneficial use, it's within your discretion to decide that this use is not beneficial use, and that you're the decision maker. You can look to your attorney to have an opinion, and she gave you a nuanced opinion, but you can make a different decision from her based on the nuance and the vagueness of the law that's in front of you. And I urge you to use your discretion to protect our aquifer for future generations and turn down this permit. Thank you.
Next up, I have Jesse Akins. Akins, sorry.
My name is Jesse Akins, and I live in Page. First, I want to thank y'all for valuing community input and for listening to the concerns that many of us have. Notable economist Thomas Sowell defines economics as the allocation of scarce resources. In our great state, water is perhaps one of our scarcest resources. And undoubtedly, the decisions that you make in this governing body will have an economic impact. But more importantly, your decisions have a human impact. Water is required to sustain human life, and it is required to sustain animal life. Water is required to sustain the growth of our food supply. Water is also required to maintain green lawns and beautiful landscapes. So I urge you to consider priorities as you make your deliberations about the requests brought before you. Some of these needs have a higher priority than others. Many of us have had to make difficult choices in our own lives as we allocate on a much smaller scale water usage in and around our homes and our properties. Water is a finite resource that is shared among all humans on planet Earth. So your task as the Groundwater Conservation District for Lee and Bastrop counties is to ensure the proper allocation of this shared resource in our area. The scarcity of this resource dictates wisdom in deciding how best to allocate the usage of our water. In closing, I just ask that when deciding the best use of our water, this scarce shared resource among all Texans, that you place a heavy priority on the availability of water for the sustenance of life. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Andy Weir.
Good evening. I'm Andy Weir. I'm a well owner, landowner here in Bastrop County. I'm executive director for the Simsboro Aquifer Water Defense Fund. And speaking on behalf of myself tonight, I just want to address some of the things that we saw up on the board. One would be the predicted drawdown. You saw the drawdown map for 2070. I think would have been more helpful is the drawdown map for 2030, which showed that the predicted drawdown in that area was 25 feet or less. So by 2030, they're predicting 25 feet or less drawdown in that area in the Carrizo. We've already seen the drawdown that you showed that's in your packet has exceeded that already. So we're already ahead of the game of what's predicted in that DFC model. And so I would want to say that the Thomas turfgrass permit may exacerbate that happening. Okay, so that you're going to see that drawdown, but this permit is going to accelerate and intensify that. And we see that in the models. You also had some of the models that board president showed up there with your consultant, Dr. Hutchinson. When you look at those same drawdown models using the steady state, the variable pumping, the drawdown that's exacerbated, that's accelerated by Thomas turfgrass is at a minimum 40 feet and at a maximum 60 feet of drawdown. So it does contribute significantly. These are the two Carrizo wells, and this was in your original report that you got back in July. So the drawdown does get accelerated by this Thomas turfgrass permit. The last thing I wanted to say was that I look at the wells all the time that are in the district. I have the database of wells from the district, but I've also supplemented that because the Texas Water Development Board keeps a database. They call it a groundwater database, and they have historical wells, and they have them assigned to aquifers. And so if you go and you look at the wells in the district's database, there's actually more wells than the 14. Those were sample wells provided to Dr. Hutchinson to run his work. There's a lot more wells in the area that are registered with the district. And I've got a graphic that shows that within 3 miles, there's at least 10 more wells that are Carrizo. And I say that because some of them are indicated on the Water Development Board. The other deal is the well driller reports that are done. Anytime someone drills a well, they have to submit their report online to the Water Development Board, or to SD, the well driller's report. I forget the TDLR is the regulator. And those reports get published every night by the Texas Water Development Board, and you can download those. And so anytime a new well is drilled in the district, that's added to that. And so if you use that well driller database, the groundwater database, and Lost Pines database, there's 24 wells that were essentially in the Carrizo aquifer within 3 miles of that project. So the data you're dealing with is incomplete. There's a lot more people, involved. So I looked at all of those property parcels because the Water Development Board will provide you with the appraisal district property map. So if you put that map on there and you assign that well to that property, there's $300 million worth of property value that are impacted, that are connected to those wells. So that's just the wells that are in that area. Then if you extend that to the people that might be using the tributaries to the West Jaywa, or that might be using springs or seeps, then that value goes up. And so those are some of the things that I think were not presented, that we're ahead of the game as far as drawdown for the DFC, and it's going to be accelerated by Thomas turfgrass. And there's a huge amount of value in those ranches surrounding that property. Thank you.
Mr. Jim Miller?
We own a property that is approximately a mile to the west of where they're talking about drilling the wells. We have springs, West Jaywa, the Marshy Branch, confluence on our property. They're still flowing right now. The thing that comes to mind here to me is that we're in the middle of a drought, a pretty significant one. My brother always said that the environmentalist is the guy who's already got a condo on the mountain. I think that my recommendation to the council here is that you would proceed slowly on this. Give Thomas turfgrass a fair database judgment. There are a lot of people around here who have wells and they're concerned about their wells, and rightly so. But when I bought my property, I got no guarantee on how much rainfall I get or if my well that I do not have would ever run dry. So I would ask that this body proceed carefully with real data, not emotional data, and make the best judgment. For Thomas turfgrass, they're doing a fine business here. and for the rest of the property owners. But please proceed on real data. Thank you.
Thank you. It's coming up. I got two more people. I got it. Yeah, Natasha said to give 5 for everybody. Mr. Bill Gammerdinger.
That's actually well done, which is hard to do. Yes, my name's Bill Gammerdinger. I'm here representing my wife, actually, who owns property approximately 2.5 miles to the east of the Thomas Turfgrass. My issue was with the hydrologist, speaking of averages and wet years and dry years. Well, we have a surface well that goes down 160 feet, and that's it. And I don't, in wet years, there's no issue. Thomas Turfgrass isn't going to be pumping much, and there's going to be lots of water in our surface well. It's the dry years. I mean, the only thing that counts are the dry years, because the crack releases land for cattle grazing, and they get the water now today only out of our one shallow well, which supplies the house. So you can't look at averages, you can't look at medians, you gotta look at the worst case. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, with that, I'd like to bring up Mr. Jay Watson. I know there's a coalition of folks, and you've consolidated into 5 speakers.
Correct.
So I very much appreciate that. So please, Mr. Watson.
Yes, my name is Jay Watson, ranch owner in Page, Texas. We share a fence line with the Thomas operation on the west perimeter. The West Yawa Creek, actually I should state it this way, since there's some debate about ownership. We are Penridge Ranch on the Yawa, and next door to us is Penridge Ranch. 2 different owners, very common name. I think it's an important distinction. The West Yawa Creek runs through our property and directly into theirs, where our fences intersect. Diane and I are part of a community group that opposes the Thomas Turf Farm turfgrass application. There are over 40 landowners in this kind of called a self-proclaimed coalition of concerned neighbors. We represent over 4,500 acres between us. Many of those neighbors also oppose this application. Many of them are represented here. I'll just say by show of hand, those of you in the neighborhood, just so you can see, many of those had asked to speak, and we said we'd try to streamline this so we all get home before midnight, hopefully. As a group, we thank you for your continued public comment on this gravely important matter. So the question is, how do we get to this point? And I want to give just a little bit of background. Diane and I, my wife, bought the ranch last summer. As we were moving into the ranch, Thomas was completing the clear cut, starting to grow in the initial grass crop, which meant a lot of irrigation. As the rains returned in the fall, we started experiencing substantial runoff of soil and soot onto the property. I know there's a big debate about this runoff thing, but if I saturate the soil and the soil can't take the rain, what caused the runoff? I think it's something that is somewhat unresolved, because we tend to say the rainfall ran off and the water's going to go where the water wants to go. But if the ground has been saturated and can't absorb the rainfall, then we have a problem. I had 3 or 4 calls with Emory as I noticed the situation getting worse. Gave him the benefit of the doubt that maybe he wasn't aware of this low part of the property that was running onto ours. Those conversations were nice, but he committed to nothing. Had similar conversations with his son Seth, went about the same place. We then started talking about these waste issues with neighbors. It became very clear that this was more than just our issue. Our next door neighbor has nearly a 20,000 square foot stock pond that was filled up, no water. We knew this was an issue and we had to deal with it. So we began organizing and documenting these situations. Several of those stories have been shared and documented in the package that we provided you, that you went through. You asked some questions about the runoff. There are some pictures of the runoff on our property, on the stock pond next door, and Mickey's got some that he's going to talk about next as well. So we thought this was a waste issue. Then we got a public notice, so it shifted to water issue. Serious confusion about the public notice. Who received it? Some fence line neighbors received it, others did not. The notice spoke to a link that someone wanted to join a contested case. It implied that someone else had contested the permit and we could get details at the link. It did not say anything about if we wanted to object to this permit. So it's a language issue for delay, if you will. But the biggest question is, what does 3950 acre feet mean? We deal in gallons. Quickly learned that it was 1.28 billion gallons, and that set off a wave of conversation and objection. On Sunday, July 16th, 3 days before the public hearing was called, we gathered as a group for the first time. So we had about 3 days to prepare for that. What you heard from the neighbors was passion and concern. At the July 19th meeting, you listened intently, and you allowed us to continue the public dialogue, and for that we're very appreciative. During this time between the meetings, we've continued to document the various impacts. We've met in small groups, large groups. We've assembled a group of advisors experienced in these matters to help us with the legal, procedural, administrative, and technical issues. And that brings us to last week. Special call session. We attended and spoke at the public comment part of it. And we delivered to you 4 things. A revised letter from the first time we met with our recommendation. A comprehensive package of stories, pictures, and issues from the neighboring community. A specific list of notice deficiencies, some of which have been addressed, some of which seem to be still uncertain. And then a detailed description of the ownership issues not accounted for in the application. Natasha spoke to, they're still hustling to resolve the ownership matter. Seems to be pretty straightforward. 3 things that the application requires: the applicant, well owner, and landowner. And the landowner and the public records don't match what was referred to in the application. And we continue to look at ways to revise that application, even post the general manager submitting the completed application notice on 6/27. So this brings us to today. The district has a defined process to submit, review, and ultimately confirm a permit application. There are inputs required as part of that process, not unlike those requested for land purchase, a loan, or anything of the sort. For a permit to be confirmed, the application must properly identify and inform the district about the applicant, the well owner, and the owner of the land on which a registered well is located, as well as document the applicant's authority vis-a-vis a well to be registered, constructed, and operated for the proposed use. If the applicant is different from those other parties, the rule makes no express exception for related parties. And in this case, the property owner was incorrectly stated. And the relationship between the applicant and the property owner was never established, as required by the application. Sloppy? Yes. But not your issue. This issue is between Thomas and his lawyers. The submission of October 26, 2022 was rushed to avoid the pending October 27, 2022 suspension of new permits. It was just sloppy. I asked the district to honor and enforce the process. The integrity of this process is a direct reflection on the staff and the board. If they messed up trying to get under the wire, don't reward them by turning a blind eye to the rules that you are charged with enforcing, including those pertaining to who can apply for a permit. The basic information element that drives the groundwater assignment is incorrect. This is incurable, and as relates to the current application package, there's only one action to be taken, and that's to reject the application outright, as it has been submitted, and require 6 Briggs to refile in accordance with district rules. It's your duty to reject this application outright.
Thank you, sir. I have a couple questions. First, I wanted to thank the coalition for the booklet and organizing and consolidating everything and putting this together. It's obviously taking you lots of time and money and effort. We really appreciate this very much. I just wanted to briefly summarize the contents of this booklet. There's the letter to the board, the recent letter, there's the previous letter. And I have a question on that. So originally, back in July, the coalition originally requested 1,800 feet. And now in this updated letter, September, the new request has been updated to 1,200 acre feet.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay. And there are 22 briefs in here by the landowners. And I went through and I read each and every one of them. 4 of the briefs, the landowners do not have any well at all. 3 of the briefs, oops, sorry, that's on me. Cancel, all right. It's not canceling. Thank you. Apologize about that. Right. So as I was reading these 22, 4 of the briefs, the landowners did not have any well. 3 of the other briefs, the landowners did have wells, but they're stating that everything is fine. They have no issues. And then another 4 briefs, another 4 landowners have reported dry ponds or dry creeks, but before Thomas Turfgrass even drilled their well, before of July of 22. 2 have reported a dry pond, well, 1 reported a dry pond in 2011, a dry creek in 2009, and some dry creeks beginning May of 2022. And I just wanted to note that that was before the Thomas Turfgrass had even completed their well. And I did want to take a look at the recent well activity, because there was some, the data that was provided on the Penn Ridge Ranch.
Correct.
And that's where I did highlight that the well number 467 that I did highlight earlier that had that large drawdown. There was 2 other wells, the Watson House and the Duluth Stock. Those are Calvert Bluff wells, and they're experiencing currently about an 8 and 6 foot drawdown. And then there's the curious was the Duluth Penn. That well has actually gone up. Since last December, it's actually gone up by 14 feet, and since March, it's gone up by 3 feet. That seemed like the outlier. That seemed just.
I looked the gym to that one.
Okay. So that seemed like an outlier there. So I just wanted to thank you again for the booklet. It was very, very useful. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you all for your time, and thank you for your service. This is, there's a lot to unpack here, and we appreciate the effort.
Oh, one last question, sir. Did the coalition provide any sort of hydrological study to support your requests?
I think most of the time was trying to interpret yours.
Okay, good. Yeah, I hear.
I mean, we had to find some resources to help us understand that, much less, and we didn't have enough time.
Yeah, I understood, and yeah, that's thank you, sir. Next up, Wallace.
That's me, thank you.
DeHart.
Well, I'm gonna be a little bit more detailed, perhaps. But thank you, Jay. Thank you too for the Lost Pines Groundwater Conservation Board members. Ladies and gentlemen and guests, my name is Wallace Dehart. My wife Connie and I live 5 miles west of Fedor and share a fence line turf farm. I own a 200-acre cow-calf operation. Mr. President, I'm mindful that some of the things I'm going to discuss is beyond the board's recommendation or jurisdiction. But I feel it's most important that I bring these concerns out, not only for me, but for my neighbors. This spring, even after 14 inches of rain, my 4 artesian wells have gone dry as of August 2023. I have 3 4-inch wells and 1 2 7/8-inch well. I have the ability to pump water from well number 1 to the north and from well number 2 to the south. The overflow of these 2 wells is diverted downhill to Darden Springs. Most of the water I pump is for livestock, my yard, and my trees. Darden Springs was developed by Dr. W.B. Darden in 1887 and has produced spring water for over 137 years. It's in front of my house and has never stopped flowing until now. It's bone dry until we got this 1.25 inch rain last week. Water well number 1 and number 2, as well as Darden Springs, flow west to east from Blue, Texas, into Willie Branch, which flows into the West Yawall Creek area. I have been on this property since 1975 and have had always an abundant amount of good, clean drinking water for my cattle. By August of this year, after all the rains, all of these sources have dried up due to overpumping at the turf farm. Well number 1 and number 2 are 200 and 300 feet deep. They were drilled in 1975 and in 1981. Both produced large amounts of artesian water as testified by Secret Water Wells in Bryan, Texas. Water well number 1 went dry in August, and I was fortunate enough to have Easel Water Well people come out and lower my pump 50 feet. So I'm now able to water my yard and send some water, clean water, to my cattle. I did this at my own expense because I didn't have time to go through the bureaucracy of trying to find out where I could get reimbursed. Well number 3 is an artesian well in combination with a windmill. This well is approximately 100 feet deep. The pump is 3 inches in diameter and is set 22 feet below the surface. This well was drilled in 1982 and flowed large amounts of artesian water all these years. I erected the windmill in January of 2002. This well is 150 yards from the turf farm. 150 yards. It's totally dry. That's 3 for 3. Let's talk about well number 4. Well number 4 is 2 7/8 diameter, spring fed, and is approximately 93 feet deep, and was created in 1979 when the oil seismograph crews were exploring for oil and gas. Many of these test boreholes had to be plugged due to artesian water flow. We had water everywhere. This well is 100 yards from the turf farm and feeds a 3-acre creek and pond. Well number 4 stopped flowing June of this year. I realize that some of the items I'm going to bring up now are beyond the jurisdiction, and I'm mindful of that, of the board. But I think it's important to understand that some of the runoff is creating problems for me and my neighbors, and as well as creating runoff on my property from biohazards and their heavy metal that they have put on their property. Mr. President, my biggest concern for well number 4, is catching runoff from the turf farm. The turf farm pumped water onto my property in June of 2023. The man will tell you he did. Due to rain or over pumping, runoff of this creek and pond catches burnt tree ash, silt, mud, dillo dirt, i.e. their compost, and has now totally killed my pond in the back, or my creek. It's not fit for wildlife except for hogs. My wood ducks are gone. I had over 200. All the fish have died. And there's nothing left at this location alive. My long-term concern is the dillo dirt that is contaminating this area. Dillo dirt. Dillo dirt is a soil amendment, i.e. compost, processed from a wastewater sewage plant in East Austin. Dillo dirt is made up from human waste and is flowing into my pond and lakes. Dillo dirt contains heavy metals, ammonia, pesticides, E. coli, and other toxic wastes. How can we be sure this compost is safe? How can we be sure? It's not monitored. They don't monitor it out there. There's no quality control, third-party testing. Is 160 degrees F Fahrenheit suitable as a heat source to kill all the toxins and remove all the heavy metals? I do not think so. In the early 90s, dillo dirt was not allowed by the EPA or to be used around gardening or consumers. This is a fact. You can look it up. It's documented. What changed now? Corporate greed. Simply corporate greed. Do athletes who play on this sod know the potential health hazards? I don't think so. Go ask them what they think about it. Mr. John Dromgoole, who some of you I'm sure know, the Austin Natural Gardener, will not sell this material in any of his Austin garden centers for all the reasons I've just stated. Another issue I have with the turf farm is in June of this year, they pumped water from his pond onto my fence line without my knowledge or permission. My neighbors and I first thought that we had a massive water leak from Lee County Water at a 4-inch water line. Mr. President, after several hours of investigation with a crew of 6, we discovered the overflow of water was coming from the turf farm. I called Mr. Turf's cell phone for information as to what was going on and where was this water coming from. He mumbled some words I didn't understand, and I lost connection. He remembers. 20 or 30 minutes later, I got a call back. that a pond on the turf farm needed to be drained for repair. I said, I do not want any more pumping or silt, dillo dirt, ash, mud, or heavy metals onto my property. His response was, quote, that the water has to go somewhere, unquote. I made a suggestion, he remembers this, that with all his equipment and resources, that he should dig a second pond and pump out of the old pond into the new pond. In that way, you have two ponds. Click, the phone went dead.
Sir, I just want to state that the coalition has 5 minutes left.
All right, I'll hurry. I have had multiple issues with the runoff. The destruction of my fence, brush, and trash stacked on my corner posts where our property meets. He said he would fix my fence and talk to the dozer operators. 6 weeks later, I fixed the fence at my own expense and didn't ask for any more help from him. I also have a concern that everything that seems to go wrong at the turf farm is because of Mother Nature. Mother Nature causes all these problems. Mother Nature did not tear down and burn up 1,000 acres of trees. Mother Nature did not replace or displace all the wildlife. Mother Nature did not destroy my fence in several places or pump hazardous waste over onto my property with heavy metals. The turf people keep talking of planting a cover crop. Last year and this year, we still don't see a cover crop. Just more idle words. They have stated in writing that $1.5 million has been spent on compost and will top dress their turf farm twice a year with dillo dirt. Here we go again, we're gonna get more of it. And when they overpump, they pump into a lake or a pond. When it gets full, it runs around on my property. The dirty little secret of dillo dirt is it floats and the wind blows it. It floats onto me, my neighbors, and it blows onto me and my neighbors. Unfortunately, for some reason, the turf farm has a beautiful website, but they never explain what dillo dirt is or what compost is on the website. I'm sure it's a mere oversight. Our water source has been compromised, and our land has been destroyed with biohazards and heavy metals. Thursday last week, we were fortunate to get 1.25 inches of rain. On Friday morning, I drove to my back south fence line and witnessed another disaster. The net wire and black plastic barrier was washed away in multiple locations as a result of the river runoff from the turf farm onto me. You have to realize we've got about a 20-degree angle that goes for about a mile to his other fence line, and when it rains, it comes down on that dry dirt, wet dirt, whatever you want to call it, in a torrential river. It carried dillo dirt, mud, silt, and watermelon-sized rocks, water-sized rocks off of his road onto my property. The turf migrant workers were out busy trying to repair the damage, but the damage had been done. This is a poor and cheap solution and is not an answer to stop rain from coming down a river. I now feel that I am a target for his anger since I denied a 3-phase power line easement on my back fence line. He had the audacity to call me and want me to give up 15 feet of my 200 acres off of his 1,000 acres so he could kill more of my trees to put in a 3-phase power line. I denied it twice. I'm not a very good friend of his anymore because of that reason. And I said, you've already destroyed 1,000 trees on the acres, you're not going to destroy any more of mine. Are we as a community going to allow hazard waste and heavy metals to flow to the West Yawall Creek watershed? I hope not. We gotta think about this. Does a third-party testing ever done at the turf farm? I don't think so. Is there a quality control? Is there a difference over there between Class A and Class B? Do they know what difference is between Class A and Class B? I looked at this material in the early 90s as a soil amendment, and I did not want it on my property. And here some 30 years later, guess what? It's on my property.
President Hernandez, I'm showing that the
Yeah, the 25 minutes are about to be up in,
All right, I'll
in 2
wind up,
seconds.
sir, I'm sorry. The turf farm now wants 2,200 feet, as I understand, in a TV commercial, 2,200 acre feet of water. That's a lot of water. That's more than 1.6 times more water than Lee County Water pumps out of 9 wells to 4,500 paying customers. Does that seem fair? Isn't that a waste of water?
Okay, sir, if you can,
I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. I'm sorry I took so long, but I'm passionate about this, and something needs to be done. I hope you deny their request. Thank you.
so we've got a situation where I granted 25 straight minutes to the coalition, and they've now exceeded that, and we still had 3 coalition members left to speak. Can you, the remaining 3, speak in under 3 minutes or so? Or I guess I can't do that, right? I have to give...
I would move on to everyone else that signed up, and the coalition is welcome to submit their written comments, and that will also be on record.
Well, the remaining 3 that signed up are coalition folks, and I've already given them the 25 minutes.
So everybody else, you've gone through everybody else that signed up to speak?
Except, yes, except for that there's remaining 3 coalition folks.
You can take the last one off.
Okay. All right, Mr. Hess, let's, please, if you can, I've already given folks 5 minutes, so if you can, please.
I'm going to cut this really short. David Hess, we border the Watsons. My parents bought this property in the mid-'80s. The well that we're concerned about in this case, because you guys are looking right now, and I'm going to freehand this for a minute, you guys have just been looking at a 50-year model. I have 42 years of fact. Okay? There's a big difference between what you're gonna model and what's already happened, right? So here's what's happened with ours. Our well was drilled in 1981. It's an artesian well. It was a little over 200 feet deep. That well rated, and you can look at the reports, 30 gallons per minute. The flow was so strong that they could not cap off the well. So they let it free flow. It's never had a pump in it at all. Since that time, we have photographic evidence, you can look in the packet, that artesian well has not only filled up to overflowing our tank, our stock tank, but flowed down to the Watson stock tank to overflow, and down to the West Yagua, where it's been flowing ever since. For 42 years straight, photographic evidence. We have marsh grasses around our tank that we're told signifies constant level for that time. You can look at the photographs. Okay, so there's no question of what's happened. As of July, our well went dry. Do the math. There is only one thing that has changed in that time, and that's them. when you identify that you have a problem, first thing you do is stop and identify why the problem occurred. That's what we're asking you to do today. So take some time and study the data, get the data. That's what you guys are talking about, to get proper data, we understand. Get it, take the time, but in the meantime, throttle them. Make them redo the applications like they should have done to begin with, in the proper form and in the proper time. And let's protect the homeowners that you represent. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Mr. David Kohler? Oh, no. Yes. Yes, David Kohler. Thank you.
Correct. So, again, I know we passed 25 minutes. Thank you for your time, President Hernandez and Board. Thank you for allowing me to be here. I'm not sure how much I can expound on what's been said tonight, except the information is in front of you that came from the PowerPoint presentation. Not what you see on the board with charts and graphs and dots that can be put in different places to manipulate different outcomes. But the verbiage that's in the written data report that you reflected and identified, and it says, the current GIM is not robust enough to evaluate the impacts with high confidence. It says it right there in the report. The other thing I'd like to address is that trying to predict crash data by lowering speed limits, vehicle airbag technology can be visibly seen, and you can come back and modify that data. This is data that you cannot modify because you don't know what this data is. It's predictions, it's what ifs, could ifs, should ifs. And once you open that Pandora's box, then you'll have the real data. But what you're hearing is the passionate speaking of people who are going to be affected by this because of the unknown. And again, I thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. With that, we'll move to the Thomas. Anybody else? That's all I've got in terms of the public. All right, so now we move on to Thomas Turfgrass. I don't know who you would like to start with. Leave it up to you. Who you'd like to begin the talk? I believe you're Richard?
I'm Richard, yes.
Richard Kersey?
Richard Kersey, yes, sir.
Kersey, thank you.
I came here tonight when I learned of the issue of ownership to address that for Mr. Thomas. I've seen the application, how it was filled out. Our firm has helped Mr. Thomas form his entities over a number of years. I've been with the firm since 2006. And some of his entities have been here longer than that. This might work better if you guys have any questions about ownership. Might be better rather than me trying to explain it and answer your questions if you have any. If not, I'll do my best. If anybody has a question.
Well, I know our legal counsel is looking into the whole ownership issue,
Correct.
so they're the ones.
We passed on the information to her, and we're available for any questions that your counsel has. What I can tell you is that Thomas Turfgrass, the name Thomas Turfgrass, is what the Secretary of State calls an assumed name. We commonly call that a DBA, doing business as. It is the DBA for Mondo Gardens Incorporated. Okay, Mondo Gardens Incorporated is sort of the parent company of Mr. Thomas's companies. His companies are all family oriented. Everybody involved in his companies at a high level are Mr. Thomas, his wife, or his children at the ownership. Mr. Thomas for Mondo Gardens, which is DBA Thomas Turfgrass, he is the sole director, he is the president, and he is a majority shareholder in that corporation. That corporation is the sole owner of the Six Sprigs LLC. I know it's got a long name, but everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say Six Sprigs. If you look at the deed records, you'll see that Six Sprigs is the fee simple owner of the fee simple interest of the land involved here where the permits are requested on. However, that's not the only part of ownership. Mondo Gardens has a leasehold interest because Six Springs leases to Mondo Gardens to run the turfgrass operation. Okay, so when we say Mondo Gardens and we say Thomas Turfgrass, one and the same, and they are the owner of Six Springs. All of this is a matter of public record with the Secretary of State. The Thomas Turfgrass DBA goes all the way back to 2012. And so from a standpoint of anybody that would think there would be confusion, anything like that, 5 minutes of research with the Secretary of State, and it's obvious who the owners are, or the owner is of this operation. And my colleague can speak a little bit more toward the water code, but the water code does allow leasehold interests to be owners and act as owners in these situations to apply for these permits and so forth. And that's all that's happening here. Nobody's trying to hide the ball. This is the owner of all the entities. He's the sole director. He's got authority from Mondo Gardens to apply for these permits, and all that's a matter of record with the corporate books and so forth, which we're happy to share with your council at any time that she has a question on that. So I'll entertain any questions about ownership. Yes, ma'am.
So the corporation and the Thomases operate out of Horton, Texas, is that right?
That is the principal office of Mondo Gardens. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, it says the initial director is Emery Thomas and that he's in Horton too, but I thought he was up here.
Well, Emery moves around a lot.
Okay.
I think the company started in Wharton County.
Mm-hmm.
He's grown the company over time. He's in several counties now. But a corporation, as you know, has a principal office, and that's where they still maintain, as a record, the principal office is, but corporations can have offices in multiple locations. That would be the principal office of record. Yes, ma'am.
Any questions for this?
Is this on? It's not on. Okay.
I can hear you.
So we have a lot of information on Six Springs, but we are still awaiting and just learned that we needed to get the ownership of Mondo Gardens,
Yes, ma'am.
that structure. So that is something that we need and is not readily available in a 5-minute search on the internet. So if you could get that through Trey to me.
Sure.
We
And
would look at that as well.
If you know what documents you need, we've got access to all of that. And the documents that need to be filed with the Secretary of State, the certificate of formation, so forth, DBA, assumed name certificates, all that, it's on the Secretary of State SOS website. I think you have to set up an account to get access to it.
We do have,
Yeah.
we have a corporate.
That's on the only thing that's not filed with record for any business is their, if it's an LLC, their well, for a corporation, their bylaws, for an LLC, their company agreement. Those are not things that are filed with record, but we have those if it'll help. But
We would like whatever is not filed, and so since, we can speak offline, but we do need the percent ownership structure for Mondo.
sure, we can certainly get it. It's easily explained, I assure you. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
Seth Thomas.
I'm Seth Thomas with Thomas Turfgrass, and I'd like to start off by saying that I do find it upsetting that people that we don't even know and haven't met yet at all would go so far out of their way to disparage our character with so many false claims and statements. I totally understand any facts and things that have actually happened that we need to address, but I've heard so many things that are either completely untrue or at least a misleading statement at best. I do believe that once we get to know each other, we can create a better understanding of each other and be at peace with each other. But with that being said, I would like to address some of the claims that I've seen on Watson's packet and some of the Facebook posts that they make about us. One of them is watering during the day. And it's being assumed that we're losing all this water to evaporation and we're wasting water by watering during the hours of the day. Well, we really don't lose a whole lot of water to evaporation because, first of all, we aerify very frequently, which is loosening up the soil, letting more oxygen, more water infiltration in the soil. We're also working with sandy soils, which has a very high percolation rate. Our irrigation system is as good as we can find. So the water droplets are large, it hits the ground, and it is in the soil profile in a very quick manner. It does not have much chance to evaporate. Not only that, but we bought a product called Hydrotane, and we inject that chemical over our farm, especially during periods of drought. And what Hydrotane does is it helps penetrate the soil even quicker, and it retains moisture in the soil even more than it would if the Hydrotane was not there. And these are things that, you know, people are making an assumption that we don't have a drought contingency plan. Well, these are part of our contingency plan. It's just being assumed that we don't do anything different during times of drought. But that's not true. But other things that we do are we raise our mowing height, which makes the roots go deeper into the soil. We keep our blades sharp so that when we do mow, we're not tearing up the grass to where it's letting more transpiration happen out of the plant. Some areas we don't even mow at all. We just leave them alone until we get into outside of a drought situation. We use growth regulators, which are designed for several things, but we're using them in this situation to slow the plant's metabolism down and not use as much resources. We also have stopped fertilizing on our 6 Briggs farm. We haven't fertilized since probably June, because the more you fertilize, the more water is required to keep it moving. It's needing to grow, so it's needing more water, so we stopped fertilizing. You know, I can go through some of these pictures that was on this Watson packet. I mean, it's so deceptive how you got pictures of obviously right after a rain event where the sky is gray and the pond is overflowing, and then you show a pond with obviously very dormant grass around it and clear blue skies. I mean, we're not comparing apples to apples there. There's one even with a rainbow in here, obviously right after a rain. I've got several things here that I'm just like, this isn't even worth really even discussing. Also, Mr. Hess just told us that his artesian well used to overflow and flow out, and he flowed into the West Yawall Creek. Well, number one, that is water leaving the area now, so that has an effect on the groundwater in that area. It is now gone. Also, I would consider that to be wasteful. Mr. Dehart said the same thing. His artesian well, at least when it flowed, he said that it used to feed into the Willie Branch or whatever it was. Well, again, that water, once it has overflowed, even though it's artesian, you've now sent that water outside of our area and it's gone now. So we are not the only ones having an effect on groundwater in our area. These are artesian wells that are flowing when they don't need to flow. There are other people pumping during drought. I mean, everybody pumps more during drought, and we're not the only ones in the area with a well. So to say that we're the only ones that's caused the drawdown on the wells that are saying they have a drawdown is inaccurate. Mr. Dehart claims that we didn't try to do anything to rectify the situation with him. That is not correct. My dad offered to pay him for any costs that he had incurred. Mr. Dehart said, I don't want your money, and didn't say what he wanted. So we're left to saying, well, he just wants problems. He doesn't want solutions. The Dillo Dirt thing is ridiculous. TCEQ has already put their stamp of approval on Dillo Dirt. And if they didn't, and they were really sending out toxic waste to all these people, somebody would be in a world of hurt right now. I mean, somebody would be have their pantsuit on them at this point. We are very friendly with the Exters. Fortunately, we've got at least one friend around that they had an artesian well that went dry. Well, we, at our cost, sent J&S Water Wells out there to see what we could do to rehab his artesian well. Well, this particular artesian well, I believe, was like 97 feet deep. And as it turns out, there was 57 or so feet of sediment in that well. So then we, at our expense, tried to extract that material so that it would help those regain. Well, my point of that is to say that just because your well stops flowing does not mean that it's just because the water level in the area has dropped. It could also be that you have sediment in your well, which is inhibiting flow. There's also iron ore bacteria in this area that's very prevalent. We've had a well where we stopped using it in the fall. We tried to turn on the spring, and we couldn't pump it because there's so much iron ore bacteria built up on the screens that the water couldn't come into the well. And we didn't know that. We didn't know what was going on until we sent a camera down hole. And I didn't hear anybody else in here say that they did any of those measures. They're just saying, well, my water well doesn't work, and I guess it's just more convenient to blame someone else instead of going through the efforts of figuring out why. They just say, well, it's Thomas Turfgrass. Yeah, we have been in operation in Bastrop County for 13 years or more, and we have neighbors that are existing farms that we're very friendly with. I've asked them, have you had a problem with your well? No. Tim Padlock, Jim Schwantz, we live right next door to them. They have wells. They don't have problems with their wells. And we pump way more water there than we do with the Six Springs farm. We don't even have our full permit there. We're pumping exponentially more water, and they're not having problems. So that ought to tell you something. And by the way, Tim Padlock was planning to be here tonight. He couldn't make it, but he did send this text message that says Thomas Turfgrass has been a neighbor on 3 sides of us for approximately 12 years. We have 3 wells at 3 different depths that all work. We consider them good neighbors. Let's see here. You know, it drives me crazy when I hear people say that grass has no benefit, or that this is a non-beneficial use. The proof is in the pudding. If there's no benefit to grass, then nobody would buy it. We wouldn't be growing it. Without grass, there'd be a whole different set of problems. You'd have erosion, you'd have heat island effects, you would have dust problems, you'd have all kinds of problems that you don't realize until you don't have it. I would like to add that I do understand the fears and the apprehensions of growth and change, but we did do our research on this property before we even bought it to make sure that the impacts that we do cause are not severe. Our family has been farming turfgrass since 1969. We didn't come this far and serve as many people as we have by causing problems for other people or for the environment. My granddad and my dad have always instilled in us to treat others the way you would want to be treated. That is the way we intend to operate in the future. Thank you.
Mr. Thomas, I have a couple questions. How much land has been cleared on that new property, the Six Springs?
There was some land that was like partially wooded, and I'm gonna say of that it was maybe 100 to 150, and then there was some that was completely wooded that was probably closer to like 300.
Okay. And on or about September 11th, KXAN aired a story where they interviewed you, and I saw that night. And you stated several points. One, you stated, we've reduced the request down to 2,200 acre feet, Thomas said, and instead of drilling 4 wells, we're only going to drill 2. Where's the disconnect?
Okay, yeah. Well, partly on the number of wells, I did misspeak on that. We had already drilled 2, and we have 2 more that we may drill. But as far as the 2,200 acre feet, I mean, are you asking like why we're thinking that number, or what do
Well, you stated in public that you've reduced the request down to 2,200 acre feet, but yet the application still remained at 3,950, so,
Yeah, well, we became under the impression that that was not gonna be passed by the board, so that we just decided we were gonna have to do something different there.
okay. And then lastly, you stated something to the effect that regarding drawdown, you acknowledged there was going to be drawdowns, and then you stated, but not to the point where others still can't pump their water. Do you have some sort of hydrological study that you would like to present to the board to support that statement?
Well, I'm partly going off of Bill Hutchison's report of what he's saying, and, you know, like, say you have an artesian well that has lost 2 feet of head or whatever it is, well, those wells can still flow. They may need a solar powered pump or something to get just a little bit out of the ground and onto the surface. I don't think that what we're doing or even what everybody else is doing is going to make somebody where they can't pump water. I mean, there's other...
Okay, so that was based upon our hydrologist report, but Thomas took...
We also have our own hydrologist that...
Yep.
Before we bought the place, like, hey, this is what we're gonna be looking at doing, and is this gonna be a problem? And we did a study then, and...
Okay, but you have not, for this particular hearing and for this permit application, you have not provided to the district any sort of hydrological study by a hydrologist?
No, we didn't submit anything, but
okay.
we talked about, you know, what the impacts would be.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Thomas?
I have one. So when you say you did some research before you bought this is your third farm?
Yeah, well,
in
third farm in Bastrop County.
Oh, in Bastrop County. What other than hiring the hydrologist, what other you didn't go out and talk to any of the neighbors?
Nobody did talk to neighbors, but we talked to our hydrologist. We looked at the road situation. We looked at the soil types. We looked at the way that the land is and the way that things, you know, drain out there. We look at all kinds of things. We go around the soil road. We do soil tests, but as far as what this meeting is concerning, we were made sure that the water was there and to the point to where we could do what we needed to do without affecting other people to the point to where they couldn't, you know, use their wells like they needed to.
Did you look at what clear cutting 900 acres would do to the surrounding properties or maybe to the hydrology ultimately?
Well, I've never heard of trees doing anything to the hydrology of the soil, but so no, I didn't even think to do that. But there's, you know, we definitely look at what the impacts are going to be of taking down trees, because the biggest one for us is soil erosion until we can get something else in place there to hold the soil down. But we definitely take that into account. But as far as like offsetting any kind of like the benefits that the trees had, I mean, I believe that grass has the same, you know, carbon sequestration properties to it, oxygen producing qualities to it, cooling effects. So, I mean, I don't think that there's any kind of net negative effect here.
How many acres out there do you plan to farm?
Well, that's partly dependent on the water situation, but right now we're looking at around 770 acres.
Have you ever heard of Irrigation Innovation Consortium?
No, ma'am.
It's run by Texas A&M out of their Amarillo AgriLife research. They do a lot of research on efficient irrigation systems. I just wondered, we heard a lot about that at the Groundwater Summit, and I just wondered if you all participated in that, or if they have a master irrigators up at the North Plains Groundwater Conservation District. Anything like that ring any bells?
I'm not familiar with that program, but we are part of several associations such as Turf Grass Producers International, Texas Nursery and Landscape Association, Turf Grass Producers of Texas, and there's always continuing education classes in there that talk about the most efficient and best management practices to do that we attend on a regular basis. They usually hold them in the winter and the summer, and we go to those every year. And we talk about things of that nature, but your particular program that you mentioned, I have not heard of.
Well, these are pretty much water conservation programs, so I just wondered if you participated in any kind of education about water
Oh,
conservation.
about 100, yes, for sure. We definitely talk about water conservation in these seminars that we go to.
I don't have any more questions.
Any- Mr. Sherrill?
Hello, sir.
Yes, sir.
I want to know the 720 acres, do you have different types of topsoil?
For the most part, it's very sandy, especially on this farm. It's pretty consistently sand. There's a clay layer it varies on how deep it is, but anywhere from 18 inches to 3 feet, I guess, there's a layer of clay. But on the top, it's almost all sand.
Would you not put more water on sandy soil than you would clay land?
That is correct. We do need to put more water on sandy soil. And not only sandy, but also because it's hilly, we have to use a little bit more water because you get hot spots or dry spots on the tops of hills, and that's another reason why we would need.
Do you use terraces?
No, we do not use terraces, but the problem with terraces, from what I've been told, is that they're great until they break, and then once they break, the problem gets even worse as far as, or you really lose, you can lose a lot to erosion if they do break.
Do you have retention ponds?
We do. Yes, sir.
Are they large enough to hold a lot of your runoff?
Well, 2 of them that we built are large enough, and we intend to put pumps in there that are large enough to pump that water into a different pond as it's filling up to try to catch as much of that as possible. Some of these other ones we don't consider a lot of water runs off to. They all end up overflowing. I think a lot of people that aren't from this area don't understand that you can build a pond as big as you can possibly make it, but at some point it's going to overflow with all the water, the way the water runs off of these hills. It's like a river, and it's coming fast. But if you're asking if it's enough to keep water from ever overflowing, no, they're not.
Yeah.
Not anywhere close to it.
How about that? I have another question if I don't forget. And that is your droplets. I was interested in the size of your droplets. You have large droplets. Can you give me a diameter of the droplet size?
Well, not right offhand, I can't, but I know that's the idea behind these sprinklers.
Is the head down or is the head up?
So these are drops that are, and that's the other thing, these are as close to the ground as we can get them, usually 2 or 3 feet off the ground. And there's a hose, and then there's a sprinkler at the bottom of that hose, and it's letting water go out, and it's only 2 or 3 feet above the ground until it hits the ground. But as far as the droplet size, I don't know right offhand, but it's large enough to where it's nowhere close to a mist, or even like when you see a sprinkler in a yard, it's a much larger droplet than that.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions for Mr. Thomas? Thank you, sir.
Mr. Thomas, you're right, we should feel lucky to have you as a neighbor.
Okay, who's next between Emery, Thomas, Mr. Seifert, or Trey? Who would like to go next? I believe Mr. Seifert?
Yes, that's right, yes. Thank you, President Hernandez. Yeah, John Seifert, hydrologist for Thomas Turfgrass, and appreciate the opportunity to talk tonight. Appreciate to hear from all involved, and for the board's understanding and patience with everything that they've heard tonight. I just have a couple of things to say. One, Bill Hutchison's assessment, I wouldn't disagree with that in terms of overall assessment concerning pumping and effects. I would say that Thomas has a well under construction, well number 1, in the very southeast corner of the property. It is further away from some of the wells that are expressing, some concerns. And this will help minimize any effect of pumping, the effect of pumping. There's also some structure that goes across the property that helps minimize the effects of what we call a cone of depression spreading to the north and to the northwest. And so that's a, let's say, proactive measure that is being taken. That well is under construction. It's not pumping yet, but when it is pumping, it will become a primary source of water for this farm. I'd say the second thing I would say is that the water quality is good for irrigation, and I'm thankful for that. The Carrizo, was the aquifer that was selected here for this operation, and that they're going to try to use water as efficiently as possible. There's no advantage to pumping water when you don't need it. There's a great advantage to only pumping it when you need it. I mean, it conserves the resource, and then it also costs less money. It's more economical for everybody involved. So those are the main things I would like to, pardon me, say this evening regarding their operations and plans for the future.
Any questions of Mr. Seifert? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Trey or Emery? Mr. Trey Nevloni. Nesloni, it's an S. Sorry, it looked like a V. Sorry, Nesloni.
That's okay. Mr. President, members of the board, thank you for allowing us to speak, for allowing all the public comment. I'm just going to go through, as I spoke at the last hearing, just some of the maybe the new things that I've heard, unless you have questions for me about some of the other items. One thing I heard was about what we did to support the application, that we put no evidence or hydrologic studies into the 3950 number. I did go into great detail at the last hearing. I think I even got some questions back about the actual pumping data that we have at the Page Farm, and that is the primary, at least, or predominant, how do you want to say, evidence we use to support that number. I also submitted a letter today. I hope it got in front of you. That is detailed in that report, and I want to make sure that gets into the record. So our data, yes, we didn't submit a hydrological report. We had actual data that we used to extract and come up with a number for that. Now, I think that number is supported by Dr. Hutchison's report. I cited in my letter specifically this sentence: an analysis of irrigation water needs demonstrated that the average irrigation needs range from 1,800 to 2,200 acre feet per year. Also, based on this analysis, the estimated need of 3,950 acre feet per year during drought conditions appears to be reasonable. I agree with that. I mean, he's saying that if we get very little precipitation, we could meet the 3,950 amount. Most years, it will probably be in that range. Now, what concerns me is that the current draft permit has that set at the bottom of that range, the 1,800. That means in most years, we're not going to have enough water, at least if his modeling is correct, which we're relying on. So I would ask that the board look at that figure and at least give us enough water so that we can operate during most average years. Of course, we've calculated that we think 3,950 is in extreme drought, no precipitation. That's understood. But if we're getting even average rainfall, we want to be able to operate. So if, I know you had some questions for Seth before. We've gotten some feedback from the staff that maybe 3,950 was too high or wouldn't be looked highly upon, and that's why that number came up, because it was in that range, and we were like, okay, at least in average years, 2,200 will get us by. That's kind of where that, trying to explain that number. The property ownership situation, Mr. Kersey did a good job of explaining that. I'll only say, as a groundwater attorney, Thomas Turfgrass is definitely the entity that should be filing these applications. It controls the groundwater rights and the surface estate under the lease that we have provided to you. I know there's also an argument about property ownership, that technically we're not the surface estate owner, that's the Six Sprigs Company. As Mr. Kersey said, That company is a wholly owned subsidiary of Mondo Gardens DBA Turfgrass. So when we fill out the application, they're asking, like you would Elon Musk, do you own the Gigafactory, or does Tesla own it? Maybe it's under a subsidiary, but they would say they own it. That's why we put that on the application. You now have the deed, the lease, the certificate of formation, and the articles of incorporation for Mondo Gardens, Inc. that I submitted. If your general counsel or you need any other information associated, we're not trying to hide the ball here. Basically, this is all owned by the same or under the same parent company. I understand why that question is in there, because you don't want somebody going on the property and putting in wells when they don't have the authority, right? But this is clearly not that situation. Thomas Turfgrass has that authority under the lease. They own or control the bundle of rights necessary to apply for groundwater wells and to irrigate their property and to exercise the groundwater rights on that property. As far as the notice, there were some complaints about notice. We support the notice the district put out. I'll reiterate that I looked through the rules, and all the items that were in the district rules that are required to be put in the notice were correct. Now, there were some, I also want to say our application correctly pointed out, like the aquifer and the gallons per minute, those were mistakes that were later corrected, but I don't think that made the notice fatal. All the items that were in there that are required by the water code and by the district rules were correct. I understand, we're in a drought. We understand people are having problems with water table levels, the creek. I've read some things about the creek. We don't, we're sympathetic to that. Also, I just want to point out, we don't have a permit yet, right? We just have one small agricultural exempt well. The idea that our pumping so far is causing all these problems, I think it would have to be small. I mean, it's more likely that it's the additional pumping and the drought. Now, we are wanting to study, once we start pumping, how is that going to affect the surrounding neighbors? And that's why we've agreed to an extensive monitoring program. If you look at the district rules, I think our size production only requires like one monitoring well or something of that nature. We've agreed to 3 wells to make sure that we know the effects of our pumping and we know it won't harm any of our neighbors. That's all I have. I just, again, we support the draft permit, but other than that one thing about the 1,800, we'd like to be able to have enough water so that it gets us through most years, and that's why the 2,200 figure has come up. I'll take any questions.
May I?
Mr. Sherrill?
I would like to know what you're gonna do when you over pump. You can't pump all of your water that you need.
What do you mean over
Address
pump?
that.
We'll have a permit limit that you will create, an amount that we cannot go over. If we go over it, there will be penalties, enforcement penalties in the district rules that we can enforce.
I guess I was trying to hear something I didn't hear. And what I thought I heard was that we're gonna have monitoring wells to see what's going on. And if your aquifer's dropping and doing things such as this, that you would cut back. But I assumed wrong.
Are you talking about, I mean, people have mentioned a mitigation program. I mean, that would be something that the district would have to talk with us about. I'm not saying no to that, but none has been proposed to us at this time.
See, I have a lot of heartache with, bless this man's heart over here, he has a model to work with. But you can prove the model right, or you could prove the model wrong. And I just feel like I think that everybody needs to have a better monitoring system about what's being done with the water and the water tables below us. And that's what I'm saying. And thank you for listening.
Okay, I mean, I agree with that. We need better monitoring. We're willing to put in the monitoring wells that the district thinks are appropriate.
Thank you.
Sure. I do, oh, go on, sorry.
No, I was just going to ask if there was any other questions.
I do have one more comment I forgot. I had it in a note over here. There was some talk about beneficial use and whether that was up for discretion by the board. Beneficial use or use for a beneficial purpose is an explicit definition that's defined in Chapter 36. Also, agricultural and agricultural use have lengthy definitions. I'd say look at those. Statutory interpretation is a question of law, so technically a court decides what entails those definitions, but I agree with your counsel that the beneficial use has been determined by the courts to be very broad. So that's all I would add to that.
Any questions of Mr. Nesloni? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, last but not least, Mr. Emery Thomas.
Probably least also. Thank you for allowing me to speak and appreciate your time. Just to clarify, I spend 90% of my days in Bastrop County. I actually spend my nights in Austin County, and my wife will allow me to be with her. I spend more time in Bastrop County than probably my son wants me to spend. He lives in Bastrop County, and I come over and basically get in his way. If I were a neighbor to our farm there in what we call Six Springs or Stockade Ranch Road area, I'd be concerned about water usage. But I also don't want to look at the facts and look less than 5 miles to the west and see that this company has 2 other farms that have been in existence for 8 and 14 years. And there has not been any problems that I know of with neighbors' wells. And there are probably a lot more wells in those areas than there are around Longhorn Trail or Stockade Ranch Road. I don't have a whole lot more to add. I just, please, before you accuse, please make sure that you're going down the correct path and that you have the right information. Thank you for your time.
I have a question.
Sure.
The two other farms you're mentioning that haven't caused any problems for people, are they the same soil? Are they hilly like these?
Yes,
and
ma'am.
sandy?
They are.
Same situation?
One of the farms, what we call the Page Farm, is on the west side of Highway 290, and it has probably 20% of it is more of a clay loam soil, but all of the other 80% plus is all sand.
And so those wells are also in the Carrizo?
Yes, ma'am. And we do have one well on that farm that is Simsboro. But the other farm across 290, it has all Carrizo wells, and it is 100% sand.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Rogers?
Yeah, I've seen your place over on Old Potato Road. That's the one that's going out. And it seems relatively flat to me, but it seems like I've heard some testimony that the new place, Six Springs, is topographically a little more challenging. I mean, it has a lot of hills.
It does have a lot of hills, but we have a lot of hills on both the,
okay.
on both the, what we call the Page Farm, which is west of 290, and then east of 290 is what we call the McDade Farm. They both have a lot of undulation. Now, that's not to say that there aren't some areas that are fairly flat. but I'd be glad to give you a tour.
I was just curious about the topography.
Yeah, it is very similar to what we call the new farm in the Stockade Ranch Road area.
I have one question, and this is, I guess, rainfall question. And I'm familiar with where the Watsons are and that type of thing with their land topography and the hills. What would you think would happen if you had a 12-inch rain on that property in 10 hours? How much runoff and how would it, would you think you would have erosion and all that with your grass cover?
Once we have a solid cover with our turf grass, and even, we will be harvesting sections of that all the time, but there's also sections that, they're all growing back as soon as we harvest. And yeah, if you have a 12-inch rain, you're going to have a lot of rain runoff.
You sure are, yes.
But you shouldn't have any erosion. There's very, very little erosion.
You think that's true with that stand?
Yes, because Bermuda grass roots hold that soil very well. Even after it's been harvested, there's a lot of roots in that soil right below the harvest. So I won't say there's no erosion at all, but it's very little. And when we harvest, there's not going to be, there's a lot less than probably 20% at the very most, and that's if we have a great big order all at one time, that would be open, what I call open. Excuse me. And that would, there would be, you couldn't see any grass on it, other than the strip. We leave a strip in there.
Okay, my question was just a general question, and this hasn't to do anything with the permit. I was just curious.
No, I appreciate the question.
About if y'all have any type, or gonna make any plans for possibly the excessive runoff that might happen on those hills.
Mm-hmm. You're well, please, come out.
I might just do that. Well, I have not been over there yet, but I was just asking.
Yeah, I'd like to show you what happens on our existing farms. And that really is a very, very minute problem on farms that we already have in production.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the directors? Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you.
So Natasha, we'll be heading into executive session at this point?
President Hernandez, if there are no other comments, you would close the public hearing first.
Okay.
And state the time.
All right. With that, I'm going to follow my counsel's lead. Any other further comments?
I have a question for Natasha. Since the board hasn't had the opportunity to review some of the stuff that was just given to us today, and you haven't given us the final clue, is it appropriate for us to close the public hearing when we don't yet have all the information back from you? Should we keep it open until we have full information?
So Director Smith, you could close the public hearing, but you have 60 days after the close of the hearing to act on the application.
60 days?
60 days.
So we can close the public hearing, but not necessarily have to take a vote tonight?
You do not have to act tonight.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, with that, I will close the hearing at 9:08 p.m. And we will move into executive session. So we'll have agenda item 4C the discussion, consideration, well, actually, we're going to go into executive session first. So executive session of the board pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551-.071, or any closed session permitted by law to consult with its attorneys and seek advice regarding the applications of Thomas Turfgrass for operating permits for 4 wells under District Wells Number 58-47-9.0018, 58-47-9.0021, 58-47-9.0022, and 58-47-9.020 in the Carrizo Aquifer. So at 9:09, we will go into executive session at this time.
Elvis, are you expecting any further discussion on Thomas Turfgrass issues when we come out of executive session? I'm just saying.
Possibly. If board directors have additional questions when we come out, I guess we certainly have the discussion item, and we could bring afterwards. We could speak in public if there's something that needs that. So yes. So when we return, we'll be up to 4C. Agenda 4C is what we'll take up when we reconvene when we come back. I got it. I got the record. Thank you. All right. The board will reconvene from the executive session. Now it is 9:40 p.m. No action was taken. No votes were taken. And we will be postponing this item until a later agenda. As council stated earlier, we have 60 days to act on this matter, so we will be postponing this until a later agenda. With that, any further discussion? Regular agenda item 4C, discussion, consideration of, and possible action described in item on the Thomas Turfgrass applications as described in item 4B, and the request to aggregate production described under item 4B. Is there any director that would like any other further discussion on this? All right, seeing none, then we will move on to the regular agenda. Item 4D, discussion, consideration of, and possible action on a resolution approving participation in the Bureau of Reclamation WaterSmart Applied Science Grant Program. Mr. Totten, could you just give a little bit of status or background on the grant program, the Bureau of Reclamation WaterSmart?
Yes, sir. So the grant application that we're working on is for the Bureau of Reclamation WaterSmart's Applied Science Grant. I spoke with Bill and Alan about a month or so ago and came up with the idea of developing essentially a district-scale groundwater availability model, transitioning off of Model USGS and Model 6, which gives us more flexibility in how we set up our structure within the GAM. But the idea being that we can take data from the regional GAM, feed it into our model. Our model can then evaluate it and feed data back into the regional GAM. But the intent is to give us something that's more accurate and more local scale and appropriate to the district, rather than relying solely on the existing regional model. The estimated cost of the project is $300,000 over 1 year. This is a cost-sharing grant. So the district, one question for the district is, how much of that cost sharing do we want to carry on at the district?
And the governance committee recommended 50-50 split.
Yes, sir.
Which is the maximum that we could ask for.
Right. Well, or the minimum.
Or the minimum, yeah, which was, I guess.
I believe Dr. Arsufi had mentioned possibly going for a higher split on the district, but I don't know if the federal government's going to blink an eye between 60-40 and 50-50.
Yeah, they're not gonna miss a $50,000 or so, no.
Right. So the resolution that you have makes reference to an attachment A, which was the completed application. Unfortunately, I do not have the completed application. I have a different resolution for you that just lays out the cost share, that whatever cost share y'all want to go with, without making reference to the completed application. So if you are ready to move on that, we can use, rather than the resolution in your packet, we can use this resolution, which just removes that reference to the attached completed application.
Mr. Chairman, I move we do it on a 50-50 split.
Second.
All those in favor of the 50-50 split for the applied science?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes for a 50-50 split for that grant.
We'll, my goal is to get executive summaries and an abstract out to counties and county stakeholders, people like that, to try and get some letters of support generated. The abstract, the executive summary will cover all the pertinent points. The rest of the application is tasks, budget, timelines, things like that, which, I mean, people want to see it, certainly supply it, but I think they can make a decision on whether or not to support it based on the executive summary and the abstract. So we'll work on getting that out to get, start getting letters of support hopefully next week.
And the deadline is October 17th.
17th or 14th?
I think it's, yeah, somewhere, it's mid-October, mid-October, let's say, that's the deadline for this grant. Okay, so I guess we need to have a motion and a vote to approve that resolution?
Yes, like I said, the resolution's word for word identical with just striking the whereas referencing the completed application as attachment A.
The attachment A.
Yes, sir.
So the resolution is exactly the same, except the attachment A sentence is gone, is removed. Okay. I'd entertain a motion to pass that resolution to move forward with the grant.
I so moved.
Okay, I hear Director Cole made the motion. Do I have a second? Director Semang has seconded that motion to move forward with the grant. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes, and so we will move forward with the Bureau of Reclamation Water Smart Applied Science Grant Program. Thank you so much. With that, we will move on to the regular agenda item E, the committee reports. Financial Services Committee did not meet this past month, so the Governance Committee report I have provided, it's in the packet. The committee met by Zoom 9 a.m. on September 6th. Attending were Elvis and myself, Kay Rogers, Director Semang, Natasha Martin, and James Totten. The committee discussed the Gatehouse litigation and the special board meeting for the 13th. We discussed this hearing here today, the for Thomas Turfgrass hearing. We discussed the Giddings office renovations. We discussed the possible new need possibly for election bylaws based upon Robert's Rule of Order. Mr. Totten has reached out to LRE Water to confirm a presentation to the board regarding drought and the effects of drought on the aquifers, the recharge of the aquifers, and the transmission between formations. So hopefully we can get that for October. The committee discussed this Water Smart grant that we just passed. We discussed the creation of email accounts for all the directors so that we can use the district provided email. We discussed that having dedicated cell phones and laptops for everybody was probably a bit too much, and that we really didn't use it all that much. It wasn't enough to justify those costs, but we did discuss the use of email accounts. There is an increase in our production fees that start in October. The Lost Pines did send a notice in July, and I believe we were resending that same notice out again, Mr. Totten?
We did not send the follow-up. We sent so we just sent the July notice.
You just sent the July notice again? Have you sent it twice, or just the one?
Just the one.
Just the one in July. Okay, so in July, we sent a notice that the production fees were going up in October, so just be aware of that. Dr. Hutchinson is not available in the third week of October. We normally have our regular scheduled board meetings the third week of October. Dr. Hutchinson is not available. I believe it's very important that he attends. We have possibly the aqua hearing and the legislative rules and the mitigation program. So the committee discussed that aqua would possibly be on the 25th. Manville may not be. So right now we're trying to kind of juggle between Manville and aqua. One of those may be for November. And then we also have the new legislative rules and the mitigation program for October 25th. So we have a full, pretty much a full agenda for October 25th. We're proposing, we'd like to move the meeting to the fourth Wednesday.
Have you checked with everybody to find out if we're available? I'm not sure I am.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yes, I knew that Director Cole was not available, but that is the proposal right now. If we can't form a quorum, then obviously we'll rearrange things. But the reason being, again, Dr. Hutchinson is not available that entire third week, so the thought was just to postpone it by 1 week to the fourth week of and the fourth Wednesday, which is October 25th. And then the committee planned and discussed the items for today's agenda. That's it from the governance committee. Next up, infrastructure committee. Mr. Herb Cook, any update on the Giddings office?
The building is getting closer.
We're almost there, huh? Almost.
How close?
How close?
We're waiting on the granite tops, and the plumber will get in there and finish. And the ceiling tiles have all been put in, the air conditioner's on, lighting's all in. We have to, door locks or door closures or whatever.
Yeah.
We have to get a new set of them because they have to be lever handled. They can't be regular because of ADA. But we're close.
So maybe next month, Mr. Totten? Maybe?
Possibly.
Maybe in October?
Yes, sir.
We'll move in, start to move in or move in?
Yeah, we got to get on that sign too. We'll do that next.
Yeah, we'll come back to it. We'll come back to it.
And then
We need to decide on that meeting in October for purposes of the notices, so.
Oh, yeah. You're correct. The meeting for the 25th, I mean, we have the notices that need to go out a month ahead of time for the, into the newspapers. So that's the September 25th, so just by Monday. So.
I think Tom will be back.
Okay. So we're going with October 25th for right now, because we do have the hearing notices that we do have to put in the newspaper. Okay?
sure.
All right. Yes, we do have the newspaper notice does to have a month in advance. We have to put that out. Thank you, Kay. All right, thank you for that. On the infrastructure, Education Outreach Committee did not meet this past month, I believe, and the Management Committee has not met this month either.
We met twice last month.
It was last month, so. All right, so with that next item on the agenda is 4F, the General Manager's Report.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. General Manager's report for September 20th, 2023. August was a fairly busy month for the district in terms of building applications. We had 20 combination of 20 new wells between exempt domestic and exempt agriculture. We did not register any pre-existing wells on the Form 300. Drought conditions progressed pretty aggressively between August and September. As of the most current drought report from drought.gov, 100% of Lee County is experiencing D4 exceptional drought, and approximately 98% of Bastrop County is in D4. As I stated earlier today, there's about 2% of Bastrop County, the little corner is still in D3. The GMA 12 met on August 24th at the Poso Expanded Groundwater District offices. You were sent a memo at the end of August, kind of summarizing. The GMA decided to switch things up and give y'all homework. So I'm going to call attention to the fact that we have specifically asked for the board members to help us define the first 3 items that are considered under the DFC process. And so if you can take a look at that in the memo, I kind of laid out how it's been previously defined. Any feedback you can give to me to help kind of develop new definitions that we can take back to the GMA level will certainly be helpful.
Would you mind resending that memo?
There's actually a copy of it on the dais for you as well.
Yeah, it's this one. It
Oh,
should be,
that one. Okay.
it should be in yours.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Ken, it was on the dais.
I would love to believe that my emails are cherished and, kept safe, but I know that they tend to get lost, so I supplied another copy. The other part of that is, there are several points of note in that memo, but the other point is the GMs have kind of come to the conclusion the fastest way to try and move forward on the idea of a joint mitigation program is not to have the GM sitting on the dais trying to figure out how to move forward with the joint mitigation program. Instead, what they'd like to do is get a committee from each of the 3 central districts, Brazos Valley, Post Oak, and us, possibly 3 or 4 of the members of the board together at one time to start talking about how a joint mitigation program might work. Between the 3 districts, each district does things very differently. And so we thought having board members have that discussion with, the aid of staff might be the fastest way to start moving towards a consensus. So, President Hernandez, however you want to sort that out in terms of, representation for the district. If we can get that sorted out, we can start trying to get that on the calendar. To kind of follow up on Director Cook's talk about the new office, we have met with a couple of companies about getting AV systems for the meeting room. Trying to get quotes put together for that. We're gonna have a follow-up meeting next week with an AV specialist about screens, cameras, microphones, and speakers to make sure that we have a setup that can handle streaming so we can do online meetings, and also something that'll work for us in terms of an educational space. We're also still trying to get some quotes on IT infrastructure and IT support for the office. And since Tom isn't here, we have received 3 responses to the education coordinator position. We're in the process of trying to schedule interviews with those applicants, but with Tom out, we're trying to schedule around that. So hopefully we'll be able to move forward with that fairly quickly once we get those interviews scheduled. The Rules Stakeholder Advisory Committee meeting that week after our board meeting last month, in Giddings, Bill Hutchison, Greg Ellis were there, along with the general manager from the Wallachia County Water Conservation District. The summary of that meeting is included in the packet for you. The next meeting will be a week from today. And that'll be at the Aqua offices in Bastrop. We've talked about the pending permits. And I believe that's everything I have for you tonight.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from Mr. Totten? All right, with that, we'll move on to the hydrogeologist report. Mr. Alan Standen, welcome.
This will be quick. So I got water levels from the district this past week. And so from the end of 2022 and then 2023, I looked at them in detail. I've got all your data compiled, so I will be giving you a written report next month on this. And there'll be probably a tiered suggestions on developing your groundwater management, your monitoring system for the next 2 or 3 years. And it's gonna involve a lot of existing wells and maybe future wells. Anyway, I'll present that. Talk to Vince, the 3-dimensional model we'll present to you in November. Our framework, so you actually see the visualization in November. And so we're on time in that. And I think that's all we have going on. So your monitoring program, just a thought that after hearing the discussions today, that's probably one of your most important investments for the district. And so my suggestions, I'm going to probably recommend a significant budget, not so much for the consultants, but for the district to invest in themselves. So, anyway.
Any questions of Mr. Standen?
How are we gonna figure out where to put those monitoring wells in the county rights of way?
I haven't thought about that.
Well,
Director
Well,
Richardson,
yeah,
did you ask how county right-of-way monitoring would work?
I just wondered how we're gonna decide which rights of way we wanna ask the county about. You know, how are we gonna zero in on, I mean, I guess we're gonna go to places in the district where we need monitoring wells and look at the county road right of way and see what's the widest and
Yes, sir.
I just somehow think it's not gonna be all that easy.
But we do have approval from both counties to
I
do it.
understand that.
It is a last ditch to get a well in the spot where we need it. If we can, I would say if there's any other way that we can find monitoring in the region where we need it, that would be better than going through the county right-of-way process. But it is something, it's a tool in the tool bag, but it's kind of like a 5-pound sledge. You don't want to get it out unless you absolutely have to.
You know, the good news is that you had oil and gas drilling for water wells here, and you've got identified about 25 wells that have got really good geographic distribution.
Uh-huh.
And those wells are only used part-time by those oil companies, and they're usually 8 or 10-inch diameter wells. They're perfect for monitoring. So I think that is definitely one direction that maybe, free monitoring wells in the district. So I'll present more next month.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. With that, we'll move on to item 4H, discussion of the Lost Pines Groundwater Conservation District legislation, related legislation and/or activities occurring that affect or pertain to the district and groundwater. I do not have anything on this topic. Does anybody else have anything on this topic?
It's not directly pertinent to groundwater, but the 26th in Giddings, there is a watershed protection plan startup meeting for the Middle Yewa Creek. If anybody needs information about that, send me an email, I can send you the meeting date details, but like I say, it's not directly groundwater related, but it is water related in the district, so that's being put on by, I believe it's TWRI and the Ag Extension Service.
Jim, they did say they are going to touch on hydrology.
Is it?
Yeah, and I've already signed up to go, and I know other people are as well. And it's free.
Is that at the library?
It's at the youth center, I believe.
It's at
Oh,
the
the youth center, okay.
fairgrounds or something.
No, it's over in Northwest Park.
Where's that?
Northwest Park,
I don't know where that is. I don't know Giddings very
we'll
well.
tell you.
All right. All right, he'll tell you.
It's easy to find.
Okay.
I'll get it on the district's calendar, so that way all the information's on the calendar, you can just click on it, it'll give you the map and everything that way.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on that item? All right, moving on to 4I, consideration of future agenda items. Anybody?
Oh, the Springs Initiative.
Yeah, we've got that. We've got that in the hopper. We've got the TWDB Springs Initiative is in the hopper, as well as the other person, Scott Moorhead.
Oh, yeah.
That was that's in the hopper too. So we've got a couple things for the future with TWDB. Jim, Mr. Totten, you're contacting them, right?
We also have Jordan Fernandes coming next month to do a presentation about drought, stream flow, and flow within aquifers.
Right.
So
that is confirmed with Mr. Fernandes?
That's our drought talk?
he has not, I haven't talked to him since he bumped it, he said he wanted to do it in October, so I can check and make sure that he's still good for that month.
Okay, yes, that's it. All right, anything else on that? All right, moving on. Item 4J, discussion, consideration, and possible action on district board meeting calendar. Anything from anybody? I don't have anything, and the date and the so item 4K, the date and location of the next meeting, as we just spoke about earlier. Given Dr. Hutchinson is not available the third week, we will be having the next meeting on Wednesday, October 25th in Giddings, correct?
Since there's a hearing involved, will it be at 6 or at 7?
It'll be at 6 because we have a hearing involved, and well, actually we'll have two hearings at least. We're going to have The legislative mitigation rules, legislative rules, that'll need a hearing, and we'll have at least one, probably aqua. So there will be 2 hearings on the 25th. So it'll start at 6 p.m. in Giddings on October 25th. All right, with that, we will adjourn the meeting at 10:04 p.m. Thank you.
Thanks, Elvis. Good meeting.
It's under 4 hours, right?